Everett's joining as well. Okay, Chair Fritz, it looks like, everyone who was in the waiting room is in the meeting now, so we can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Great, thanks. So I'll call the meeting of the Planning Commission for November 9th, 2021 to order. I'm going to start with my script for our Zoom meeting format. This meeting is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means consistent with State of California executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Zoom is being utilized for this meeting. In case of technical issues, meetings will be uploaded to the city website as soon as possible after this meeting. We will be conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom. Planning commissioners and staff are participating from remote locations, practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meetings by use of Zoom as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the Planning Commission may do so during public comment or may comment on agenda items during this discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. And with that, I will ask for a roll call of the planning commissioners.
All right, thank you, Chair Fritz. So we will start with Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Burns.
Here.
Commissioner Dauch.
Here.
Vice Chair Ottinger.
Here.
And Chair Fritz.
Here.
Okay, Chair Fritz, we have all members in attendance tonight.
All right, so it looks like we do not have any minutes from previous meetings to approve. So we will go on to, so this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you would like to address the Planning Commission on an item that we're not discussing tonight, now is your opportunity to do so. So please either raise your virtual hand at the bottom of the Zoom screen or wave in your video window, and we will call on you.
Okay, and while I'm waiting to see if anyone is interested in speaking, I will note that we have not received anything via email or letter for items not on the agenda. We have for the agenda item for tonight, but those have been forwarded to the commissioners.
All right, yes. All right, then seeing no one interested in speaking, we will close the public comment. And the next item is statements of conflicts of interest. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest they would like to report? I don't see anyone wanting to speak. I will just note that I did meet with a group of residents adjacent to the Huntley Square project on site last week. And I also did have a phone conversation with Bob Massaro, the developer of the project.
Thank you, Chair Fritz, and that's an excellent reminder since there were some invitations to visit the site from adjoining property owners, that if any of the commissioners did do as Chair Fritz did, please do, and maybe we can just do that right now so everyone knows as we start the agenda item, any ex parte communications.
Yeah, Kathy, do you have something?
Yes, I will. I remember that many years ago, I'm not sure how many before I was on the Planning Commission, I did join a group of planners at the time to visit the site, walking through the back of the existing townhomes, not walking on the property though, just looking in.
All right, then seeing no other statements, We'll move on to item 6A, which is a public hearing on 7950 Bodega Avenue for the Huntley Square Townhomes. I just wanted to let members of the public know kind of the format of how this meeting goes. So we'll start with hearing a report from staff on the proposed project. At that time, the planning commissioners will be able to ask questions of city staff about the staff report and about the project. Then the developer will be given an opportunity to present the project. And then again, planning commissioners can ask questions of the developer. After that, we will open the meeting to public comment. So if you have a public comment about the proposed development, this will be your opportunity to make those comments. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. There is a timer that hopefully everyone can see. And so you'll be able to know how much time you have left. Once the public comment is over, it will come back to the planning commission for deliberation and any action. So with that, I will ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Chair Fritz. And I do want to note, we have a couple of folks here this evening from representing the city and who've been working on the project in addition to myself. We have Kelly Hickler, who's been the planner for the project. She'll be presenting the staff report. And then we also have Steve Weinberger from W-Trans, who did the traffic study analysis for us. So with that, I'll go ahead and ask Kelly to go ahead and present.
All right, thank you, Carrie. I'm going to attempt to share the correct screen here. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. All right, I'm just gonna minimize that window. All right, here we go. So good evening, Planning Commission. My name's Kelly Hickler. I'm a senior planner. And tonight, as Carrie said, I'm presenting the Huntley Square project, which is a proposed 10 studio townhome unit project. The applicant is Bob Massaro / Huntley Square LLC, who's also here tonight and will be giving a presentation after me. So just a quick heads up, there's a lot of information to cover on this project, and I'm going to attempt to get through all of it as expediently, yet also as thoroughly as possible. So bear with me if I'm reading fast through the slides, and we can always circle back if you need more information or clarification on anything. The project is located at 7950 Bodega Avenue. The approximate boundaries of the project site are shown in red. The site is 0.39 acres and currently vacant. The current zoning is R7 multifamily residential, and the general plan land use is high density residential. In this existing view from Bodega Avenue looking northwest, you can see the site is elevated above street level, and notice the prominent embankment that interrupts the sidewalk. And here's a zoomed out aerial view. Hopefully it's clear enough. The project site is shown in the center with a red marker. Can you see where my mouse is pointing on the screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So that's there with the red marker. It's one of the few remaining vacant parcels in the neighborhood, and it's about a mile west of downtown Sebastopol. This neighborhood has established neighborhood or residential uses with some small neighborhood commercial developments mixed in. The immediately surrounding properties are all residential in character and currently occupied by 1- and 2-story structures. The adjacent parcel on the east side along Golden Ridge Avenue, which is right here, is a planned community of 6 2-story townhome condos. The adjacent parcel to the north up here is also a planned community of 7 1- and 2-story condos. And the adjacent parcel on the west side is zoned R7 and occupied by several multifamily residences. And then on the south side here is Sebastopol Memorial Lawn Cemetery. So the applicant will give a more detailed presentation about the project and all the project features, but I'm going to give you a brief overview. The applicant proposes to construct 2 ownership residential buildings. Each building will include 5 attached townhome style studio units for a total of 10 units. And you can see those labeled on the site plan, lots 1 through 10. It's important to note for the purposes of calculating allowable densities that the zoning code counts studio units as 1/2 of a dwelling unit. So the project is considered to have 5 dwelling units. All units will be under 600 square feet. 6 of them will include lofts and the remaining 4 will be single stories. The driveway entrance to the resident parking is off Golden Ridge Avenue across a deeded 25-foot easement along the northern third of the property, and that is this easement that's shown up here. That includes, so that leads to 10 parking spaces for residents. And the project also includes 9 parallel public parking spaces on Bodega Avenue that you can see down here. These will be for guests, and there's 1 striped space for deliveries here. There will be an access path that goes from these parking spaces on Bodega to this shared courtyard area between the buildings and then leads back to the resident parking area. As part of the project improvements, Bodega Avenue will be widened along the project frontage to accommodate the on-street parking, new bike lanes, and a new sidewalk. So the items shown in black are what Planning Commission is being asked to consider tonight and provide recommendations on, which include a zoning amendment to modify the zoning from multifamily residential R7 to a planned community PC, a conditional use permit, abbreviated CUP, to develop in the PC district, a tentative map, and an initial study mitigated negative declaration, which is a mouthful to say, so that's abbreviated ISMND. The project will also require design review board and tree board review as shown in red to ensure that it meets the city's design and tree preservation objectives. These are not within Planning Commission's purview, but we're letting you know as an FYI that that will need to happen. The project was presented to the design review board / tree board as a conceptual review on April 21st, 2021, as is required prior to the Planning Commission public hearing. And then I will go through each of these requests in more detail. So first, the zoning amendment. This requires Planning Commission and City Council review to ensure that's consistent with general plan land use goals and policies. So I'm going to first give an overview of general plan consistency. As previously stated, the general plan land use designation for the site is high density residential, abbreviated HDR. This designation allows multifamily dwellings at a density range of 12.1 to 25 dwelling units per acre. And the project is consistent with the density requirements of the HDR designation in that the 10 studio units would count as 5 dwelling units, which would be equivalent to 12.8 units per acre. The HDR designation allows for duplexes, apartments, townhouses, and other attached dwelling units. The project is consistent with this intent in that it would provide townhome style studio units. The project is also consistent with multiple general plan goals and policies as detailed in the staff reports. I've highlighted a few of them here, which include policy land use 6.2 to promote compact urban form that provides residential opportunities in close proximity to jobs, services, and transit. Policy land use 6.3 encourage and support the construction and occupation of very small houses and micro apartments. And housing policy C4, the city will encourage development of new housing to meet a range of income levels, including market rate housing and a variety of housing sizes and types. While much of the project conforms with the standards and context of the existing R7 district, there are key elements essential to the configuration of the project that fall outside of the parameters of the current R7 district standards, which is why the applicant is requesting to amend the zoning to a PC district. The staff report provides a detailed comparison of development standards between the two districts, but I'll highlight the key similarities and differences here. So first, the key similarities are both allow attached single-family dwellings. The PC district requires a conditional use permit for any development in that district. The height maximum is the same at 30 feet, 2 stories. The front yard setback for the common area is the same at 10 feet. And I'll point out there is a small typo in the staff report and draft ordinance that says 10 inches, but it should be 10 feet. So that will be corrected for the city council hearing. The minimum rear yard setback, which is currently on the north side, is the same at 25 feet. There's actually about 47 feet that's proposed from the main structures to the north property line. The minimum number of parking spaces at this is the same at 5, and the applicant's proposing 10 off-street and 9 on-street spaces. The maximum lot coverage is the same at 40%. The applicant's proposing 38.2%. The minimum open space is the same at 50 square feet per dwelling unit, and the applicant's proposing to provide 140 square feet per dwelling unit. So some of the key differences here are that while the overall lot size meets the minimum R7 standards, the minimum individual lot size for the PC district is smaller. However, the project would meet the requirements for a small lot subdivision as it's proposing attached units, although if the project is rezoned to PC, it wouldn't be subject to the small lot subdivision standard. So that's just an FYI that if it were to remain R7, it would meet those standards, but going to PC, that wouldn't be applicable. The current minimum interior side yard setbacks under the R7 zoning are 9 feet, and the proposed setbacks between the units would be 0 feet since they're townhomes. The applicant is proposing that the east and west sides of the project site be the rear yards of the units, and to change this setback from 9 feet to 8 feet. So the DRB reviewed this proposed change at their April 21st meeting and determined this adjustment was appropriate and unanimously voted to forward this recommendation to the Planning Commission. Staff also finds that the project would be consistent with the zoning ordinance. So the purpose of the PC district is to allow for comprehensively designed and well-planned residential developments, which create an integrated community where all land uses are planned and designed in a comprehensive master plan approach, including shared access, open space, infrastructure, architecture, and landscaping. The PC district provisions are also intended to encourage through utilizing freedom of design, which may deviate from the strict requirements of, but will surpass the quality required by the existing R7 zoning. So moving on to the findings, in making its recommendations, the Planning Commission shall determine whether the proposed zoning amendments complies with these 4 findings listed in the zoning ordinance. Staff has analyzed the request and recommends that modifying the zoning from R7 to PC is appropriate and complies with the findings, in that the project is compatible with the general objectives of the general plan, as it is implementing residential development in a residential zone. The small size of the 4 sale units will provide additional variety to the city's housing stock, in its conformity with public conveyance, general welfare, and good land use practice, and that the site is currently zoned for residential use within the same density range, and that the use will not have a significant environmental impact with the incorporation of the mitigation measures and conditions of approval, including construction management requirements. And the site will be residential within a block of existing residential development of a similar scale. Conditional use permit. So as I said, any development proposed in a planned community district requires a conditional use permit. CUPs are discretionary and shall be granted only when the Planning Commission determines that the proposed use complies with the 2 findings listed here. Staff has analyzed the request and recommends that granting a CUP for the project is appropriate and complies with the findings, and that the project is consistent with the general plan and all applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance, including the PC district development criteria as detailed on the following slide. So these are the 4 development criteria for PC district. The project will utilize existing fencing and provide landscaping to provide or serve as a buffer and provide compatibility between adjacent properties. It will provide sufficient amenities, including landscaping, the required number of parking spaces, private yards, and storage space for each unit. It exceeds the 12,000 square foot minimum lot size, and it exceeds the 10% gross site area for private open space. To the tentative map. In recommending approval of a tentative map, the Planning Commission shall find that the proposed project complies with the 2 findings listed in Chapter 16 of the Municipal Code. Staff has analyzed the request and recommends that granting a tentative map for the project is appropriate and complies with the findings, in that the proposed subdivision is consistent with the general plan as detailed in the previous slides and the staff report, as well as Municipal Code Chapter 16 and the State Subdivision Map Act. And the project is required to comply with the California Green Building Standard Code requirements for energy efficient buildings and appliances, including Tier 1 standards. The ISMND. An ISMND was prepared in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act to assess and mitigate the potential adverse environmental impacts of the project. It was circulated for public comment from September 28th to October 27th, 2021, consistent with local and state guidelines. No comments were received from any state, tribal, or other responsible agency, and no tribal consultation was requested. One public comment was received, which I'll discuss on the following slide, specific to the ISMND. And the ISMND identified potentially significant impacts regarding aesthetics, air quality, biological resources, cultural and tribal resources, and noise. However, mitigation measures were identified that would reduce these potential impacts to a less than significant level. These mitigation measures will be applied to the project as conditions of approval. As mitigated by the ISMND and additional conditions of approval, the project is consistent with the city's general plan and zoning ordinance. We do want to point out that the vehicle trip generation calculation was updated after the public review period ended for the ISMND. The original estimate of 73 trips per day was based on rates in the ITE trip generation manual for multifamily residential projects with a range of 1 to 3 bedroom units, which assumes 2.2 or 2.72 residents per unit and 7.32 daily trips per unit. However, since the project only includes studio units, this calculation has been updated to reflect studio units only, which assumes 1.75 residents per unit and 4.7 trips per unit, bringing the estimated number of daily trips down to 27. So since this represents a decreased impact and is less than the significance threshold of 110 trips per day, no further action is necessary under CEQA. And as Carrie said, Steve Weinberger, who prepared the transportation analysis, is here and can answer any additional questions about that at the end of the presentation. So as I mentioned, as of the writing of the staff report and the preparation of this presentation, one public comment was received specifically regarding the ISM&D, and there were 6 other public comments that were received with general comments about the project. So those generally included concerns about traffic congestion, parking, adjacent property trees, appropriateness of scale and density, noise, emergency evacuation, and shade and shadow on adjacent properties. The full text of these comments is provided as an attachment to the staff report. And staff would like to provide the following clarifications on comments and questions related to the project description and determinations in the ISM&D. So the proposed project will not be taller than what is proposed or what is allowed under the current R7 zoning. The applicant was previously considering including a carport, but is no longer including that, and there are no other accessory structures or buildings proposed. Any maps that refer to the project site as Pleasant Hill Cemetery are incorrect, and the cultural resources report prepared for the ISM&D did not identify the project site as ever being used as a cemetery. As mentioned on the previous slide, the estimated number of average daily trips has been reduced from 73 to 47. And the applicant has included site signage prohibiting delivery trucks on the access easement and has created a delivery zone on Bodega Avenue. So staff has analyzed the request and found that the project complies with CEQA guidelines section 15074, which are paraphrased here as follows. The ISM&D is provided as an attachment to the staff report, and the Planning Commission should review the ISM&D and determine if it is adequate. The Planning Commission should consider any public comments received during the public review period and during this public hearing before making a recommendation. The ISM&D and any other relevant material will be kept on file with the planning department. A mitigation monitoring reporting program has been prepared and is attached to the CEQA resolution as Exhibit A. Number 5 is not applicable as the project site is not within the boundaries of an airport land use plan or within 2 nautical miles of a public airport. And number 6 is simply stating that adoption of the ISM&D by the Planning Commission may be appealed to City Council.
And Kelly, I would just note on that last finding that in this case, because the City Council will be making the final decision on the project, but the commission is only recommending, they will also be the folks, the body that adopts the CEQA study.
Yes, okay, yes, thank you for that clarification. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, that the project will also require design review board and tree board review. These are not within Planning Commission's purview, but we just want to let you know that that's another component of the project. Design review board and tree board hearings will be scheduled after Planning Commission and City Council hearings should the project be recommended for approval. The applicant prepared a tree preservation and mitigation report in August of 2020. The report evaluated a total of 15 trees, which includes all trees present on the site and overhanging the site. A peer review of the report was prepared by the city's consulting arborist in September 2021. During the DRB and tree board conceptual review on April 21st, concerns were expressed regarding impacts of the retaining wall at the southeast portion of the site down here on a mature tree on adjacent property that is circled in red here. So the applicant has submitted revised plans with updated retaining wall construction details to avoid impacts to this tree. And this issue has been resolved to the satisfaction of both the applicants and the city's arborists. So additionally, any proposed removals of protected trees will require a permit from the city with review by the tree board, and replacement trees or fees as determined by the tree board or city arborist. So based on the facts, findings, and analysis set forth in the staff report and this presentation, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend that City Council approve the zoning amendments to modify the zoning from R7 to a planned community, the conditional use permit, the tentative map, and the ISM&D subject to the findings for approval and conditions of approval, including CEQA mitigation measures and including any modifications that the commission may wish to incorporate. So staff notes that Exhibit B, conditions of approval, has been slightly modified to remove several erroneous conditions and typos, including the recommendation to strike condition 15J as it is not necessary according to the fire chief, striking condition 19B as the project will be consistent with the zoning ordinance and that condition is not necessary, striking the word carport from condition 6 as the carport is no longer proposed. Minor formatting and grammatical changes were made to conditions 14E and 23. And a minor revision was also made to the CEQA resolution regarding the number of public comments received. So it's been updated from 2 to 6 general comments received related to the overall project. Redlined versions of both documents have been prepared, and should the Planning Commission make a motion tonight, they should be sure to recommend these documents as revised by staff in addition to any of their own modifications. So that concludes my very wordy, I feel like it was very wordy, presentation. And I can address any questions that Planning Commission has about consistency with the general plan or zoning code or the ISM&D. The applicant and the architect will also give a presentation with more details about the project. So if you have specific questions about the project itself, those might be answered by their presentation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Planning Commission.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So we'll start with any questions of the Planning Commission of staff. So any Planning Commissioner have any questions? I'd like to start? Zach, is that you waving your hand?
Yeah, I just have one point of clarification. The reduction in parking, the original number, can you give an explanation as to how that was that simply a mistake at the time of the report? How did that come to be that was so high? And then I understand the reduction, but can you just give us the history there, please?
Thank you, Zach. And I think, Steve, I'll let you handle this one.
Thanks. So when we were asked to do an evaluation of the project, the main issue that we were asked to address was the frontage dimensions to make sure that parking can be provided and the future bike lanes, which are now in design, can be accommodated. So there, and to look at the site distance restrictions that exist as you approach Bodega from Golden Ridge. There was not going to be any operational analysis, so we just used what is the closest to the project description, multifamily housing. It came to our attention that the project is all studio units. And honestly, I was not aware of that when we did the original traffic study. So we dug a little deeper on that and determined that the rates that we use from the ITE trip generation manual for multifamily are based on all these rates in the manual are based on surveys of similar uses, and the multifamily housing vehicle trip generation rates are based on apartment units that have somewhere between 1 and 3 bedrooms, and they even provide the number of residents per unit that were used in the surveys that produce that rate. So with only studio units, we then just did an estimate of how much trip generation there might be with only studios. So less people per unit, and did a simple factoring. So rates do not exist for studio only residential units. So we used the information, the data that was available to then do some factoring to come up with an estimate. And that was shown by Kelly in the presentation.
Right, and Commissioner Dauch, what we used in the CEQA analysis was the more conservative, the higher multifamily count, which did not reach a significant threshold. So
Yeah, I do.
anything less than that is a lesser impact, and therefore for CEQA doesn't need to be redone. But
Yeah,
we were just trying to get a more realistic, what is the actual likely trips, which.
understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Everett, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Are there any other projects in Sebastopol that would be similar, or where this type of approval was conducted?
So similar in terms of process? Or
Yeah,
similar
process.
in terms of type of
Yeah, I
building?
mean, I know it's hard to find another comparison. I'm just trying to see if there'd be other projects that were a result of change to planned community or.
Sure. We actually have a number of them in the city of Sebastopol. In fact, the development just to the east, at the corner of Golden Ridge and Bodega, was done through a planned community rezone, as well as the development directly to the north of both of those, this project site and that site. The most recent in the that the commission has seen was actually the Davis townhomes, which are now called the Barlow Crossing townhomes, that are at the intersection of just south of Highway 12 and Morris Street. So that's between the Sebastopol Inn and Park Village. What we tend to, and actually, so the history of planned unit development is pretty typical for most cities. I think the one change that we have done in the last couple of years is a lot of times plan unit or plan unit development or planned community development, the rezone happens, and in the past you would just sort of approve the site plan without a lot of the development standard and possibly building envelopes, things like that. What we are trying to do with the table of standards that would actually be incorporated to the ordinance is set out, well, what happens if someone wants to come and do some changes at a future time? And so in this regard, are they allowed accessory structures? I know the Davis Townhome project, they were allowed a certain, they were smaller than what the regular R7 zoning would be, which is 400 or 500 square feet. Obviously would not be appropriate here. And in fact, the applicant is proposing to not have any accessory structures. And that would be included in the zoning, forwarded and adopted by council if the project is so recommended.
And this was touched on about the bodega pavement and bike lanes. Is that going to be, does that cause those plans to be modified, or how is this going to be worked around those parking spaces?
Sure. So we'll make sure to coordinate with the applicant. At this point, I mean, obviously, I don't know when this project, if approved, when this project would be constructed. But the applicant will be responsible for the frontage improvements and including the sidewalk gap, which the city previously had in its plans for the Bodega Avenue project. And just like any other project where there's some, a private project and a public project going on, they will inherently coordinate through their encroachment permits with the Public Works Department, which will also know the schedule for the Bodega Avenue project. In some ways, and I've actually worked on this type of project before, where there's actually a full road reclamation project going on, like replacement of sewer and everything 10 feet down at the same time as a significant private project. In some ways, it's actually nice because you can coordinate to make sure the utilities get in before the final asphalt overlays are done, so that you don't get that saw cut into the brand new pavement like we have at Healdsburg and Murphy, where that unfortunately happened right after Caltrans paved. So it does take a little bit more coordination, but that's certainly something that the city is used to doing.
Okay. And I did go to the site, but I didn't run into anybody. So just for the record, and I meant to check out the flow of traffic on Golden Ridge, and I had to go a different direction. So you can coming in from the west, you can make a left turn onto Golden Ridge legally. Going out of Golden Ridge, going south, I can't remember if you can make a left-hand turn or not on that street. For some reason, I thought it was prohibited, but I may be mistaken.
That is just a regular T intersection there.
So you go either left or right on there?
I believe so, yeah.
I mean, there used to be, I knew somebody that lived there, okay, before, and I knew somewhere on there you couldn't turn, but maybe that was changed, I guess, in the meantime. Okay. All right. That's all I have questions for now.
Steve, I saw you unmute yourself. Are you going to make a comment to that?
There we go. If I get unmuted. Yeah, just there is some faded pavement markings, no left turn on Bodega Avenue. You can no longer read that and is effectively ignored. But we did evaluate site distance. We provided some recommendations for striping. Essentially, we've recommended that the project and its frontage improvements provide striping, which essentially would be the bike lane stripe, just to give vehicles pulling out of Golden Ridge a little more guidance and pulling forward, knowing where the edge of the travel lane is to gain adequate sight distance. But what you're referring to is, I believe, eastbound on Bodega Avenue to turn left into Golden Ridge. There was at the time a no left turn pavement marking, but that is now faded and no longer legible.
Okay, but does that mean it's no longer a law or policy, or is it just faded and not readable and people do it?
In my opinion, because it's so faded, I know it's there because of my length in the town, and I remember that being there. But I would venture to say that 95% of the public doesn't know exists because it's not a readable marking anymore, and effectively is no longer enforceable.
And Steve, just to add to that, I happen to drive past there every day, and there used to be a standing sign with a no left turn sign there until probably a year or two ago. That was taken down.
And I'm afraid I don't know the history behind that, and that could have been maintenance or police may have taken that out. I can't answer that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to know because, you know, those types of decisions seem to have to be made to change those street rather than, you know, all of a sudden there be no sign or direction. So that was just a little confusing to me about that. Is it a law in the books or not? And it, you know, is it enforceable or was it eliminated by some public means on public record? So I don't know if anybody can answer those questions.
Sounds like we don't really have an answer for that tonight. I
Right.
don't know that, you know, I mean, I understand the concern, but I don't know that we can really, you know, decide the fate of this project based on whether or not those traffic markings exist.
Right, but it is a point that, you know, if you're talking about you're putting more traffic on there and people aren't supposed to turn left, I mean, it just is something I'd like to know and take into consideration, you know, what the real rules are for that street. That's what I'm asking for. Not that I would consider that to be something to not have the project, but to take into consideration if you're looking at all the factors that needs to be looked at, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just add to that.
Sure.
Like I said, in my opinion, it no longer effectively exists. I don't know the history of the reason why it went in. I can tell you as sort of a warning device, it's unusual to see a no left turn off of Main Street where you don't have, say, a median blocking you from turning left. And in this case, in my opinion, in looking at the sight distance, there's not a compelling reason to have a no left turn there. So that's a list of my thoughts for that issue.
Thanks, Steve. Deborah, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, just to add to that left-hand turn, I will say I think there is a compelling reason because if you're adding 10 new dwellings and all the traffic, if you've ever tried to make a left-hand turn on Bodega Highway, it can take quite some time during the busy hours. And so I can see that traffic on Goldridge stacking up. And I did go to the site. I didn't talk to anyone, but I spent quite some time there and counted cars and looked at neighbors and density. And so I actually think that is a good point. Not my question, but I think it's a good point. So I'm not quite sure this is the right time to address this question, but you know, I understand that zoning, because it's a studio, it's considered a half of a unit. So legally or technically, these are considered 5 units instead of 10. However, there are still 10 individual dwellings there, and that will increase the density of the population in that area differently than would 5 dwellings. And my question is, has any of the research been done, and can you provide us with that as to 500 square feet is a fairly small size dwelling. So who is this targeted for? How long would they live there for? If we're looking at it as an entry level and you're thinking a younger single person, eventually, you know, provided they, you know, get a couple, have a family, they're going to be moving on. If we're looking at it for an elderly person, you know, lofts wouldn't be conducive to that. So I'm wondering, you know, how long we think the average person is going to stay there looking at the community, and will it be transient? And who is this, you know, 500 square feet again is a fairly small dwelling.
I think I think we'll have to save that question for the applicant. So now we're just asking questions of staff and the staff report. So if you have any, giving other questions about staff issues.
No, but thank you so much.
Sure, we'll hold that question until after the applicant's presentation. Kathy, did you have a question?
I did, but it also is by the applicant, I believe, so.
Okay. I did have a few questions of staff. I'm just curious, you know, because this is, you know, a tentative map and there's going to be 10 lots. I'm just wondering about the table in the development standard table for minimum lot size. If we need to address like the minimum size of one of the future subdivided lots? Or is it okay to leave that out of that table?
So sorry, Chair Fritz, are you asking if we should include, are you recommending that we include the size of the smaller 10 lots?
Well, I guess I'm just, because in the, in our development standards, we have a minimum lot size. And in the staff report, in the the development standards table, I'm sorry, I see it. It is in there. I'm sorry. It does say the individual lot size. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. I see that now. Never mind. Another question. This has to do, this is in the use permit resolution, which is on page 29 of the staff report. Let's see. So it's kind of at the top of that page, item B, Roman numeral I. The project will utilize existing fencing and provide landscaping to serve as a buffer, provide compatibility between adjacent properties. And maybe this will come up in the applicant's presentation, but in my conversation with the applicant, I asked that question about fencing, and he said they're actually providing new fencing, not relying on the existing fencing. So I just thought that item should be clarified in the resolution. And then item 4 under that same item, it says 10% of the gross site area equals 1,697.2 square feet. And I think I know what that means, but it's a little vague as to what that's referring to. So I just feel like there should be a little bit more, can there be a little bit more explanation as to I think that's the open space requirement, if I'm correct. And just the wording of that was a little not super clear to me.
Okay, and so Chair Fritz, I think certainly on the fencing, we can modify that, and I think that does make sense given the public comment we got about some of the fencing being down or on the western side of the site. Where was the second comment that you were?
So in that same section of the resolution, it's Roman numeral 4. 10% of the gross site area equals 1,697.2 square feet. And then it goes on to say what the project will provide in private open space, but there's not really a reference that initial number is the minimum required private open space, I guess is my point.
Got it.
It just sort of throws out this random number as this is a number. It's like, yeah, that's a number.
Right. Yeah. Reference what is required.
Yeah. Sort of reference that's a minimum requirement, and they're providing more than that minimum requirement. And then I had a couple questions about the mitigated negative declaration. The first one has to do with the aesthetics, which is on page 10 of that document, initial study document. So the first 3, A, B, and C, are all noted to be less than significant with mitigation. And I just have a hard time understanding why any of those 3 have a significant impact. I don't see that this having, the development of this property having an impact on a scenic vista. It's not blocking a view of anything in particular, of any particular scenic vista. So I'm just wondering how that determination is made. The second one, item B, is in reference to a state scenic highway. Bodega Avenue, if I'm not misunderstanding, I don't believe that's a state highway at that point anymore. So I don't think that applies. I think that's no impact because obviously you can't see it from downtown. So I don't think it's gonna have an impact on that scenic view. And item C is, substantially degrade the existing visual character. I mean, it's going to be a 2-story residential development, just like the rest of the neighborhood. So I don't see how that would be a significant impact. It's just being developed as allowed and as the rest of the neighborhood is already developed. So is there as I'm just trying to understand how those determinations are made as being a significant impact.
Sure, and so I'll let Kelly jump in as well. But I do know that, one of the, I believe it's item C is the potential for basically ugliness during construction, and there's construction fencing that is required as mitigation to keep that from view. So that's a temporary impact during construction. And that's pretty typical of this kind of a project. The Davis Townhomes has the fencing with the green screen on it, so that it just keeps all the dirt and piles and debris. And it's also good for safety, but it is a aesthetic note. And then I believe item B, you're correct, and the initial study does note that it is not located on a scenic highway. It does reference the trees as a scenic resource and discusses the trees a little bit. And so that is the mitigation that's incorporated for that is for the trees that are being removed, there will be additional trees required to be replanted on the site. And additionally, there is the DRB/tree board will need to review those as well. And Kelly, did you have anything to add to these?
No, yeah, that's what I was going to say for both of those. So,
although Chair Fritz, I do hear what you're saying. Is it really an impact at all? This is a bit more conservative approach to say, hey, let's mitigate the construction impacts and let's make sure we mitigate, anyone who has views of the trees to include new trees replanted.
So, okay, so that's items A and C. So would item B, I mean, we don't have a mitigation specifically for B, and I don't think it really applies. So I just want to make sure that we're not going to get caught down the road. Someone says, well, you don't have a mitigation for item B. And, to be honest, item B doesn't really apply because there's no state highway within, visual distance of this property. So is that something that should be a concern, or do we just leave it as it is?
Well, and in fact, Chair Fitz, if the commission feels that it isn't actually, this is a draft until it gets reviewed by the Planning Commission and recommended to council. So if the commission feels that, hey, it really isn't a significant impact, that it's not on a scenic highway, and the trees that are on the site aren't hugely significant. It's not. I mean, there are sites that have just gorgeous oak trees and things like that. Orchard trees and things like that generally aren't in that same consideration. You could always recommend that be changed to a less than significant impact.
Okay.
And not require the mitigation.
Yeah,
It's the heritage trees that we already do as a city that we felt like discussing there.
Sure, and I'm fine, I guess, with A and C staying. We do have mitigation, and I don't think they're significant impacts. I just want to make sure that we're not going to have a problem with the mitigated negative declaration if we have an item B, for example, that doesn't have a specific mitigation associated with it.
I think I can clarify that. So under item B in the description, it might be kind of hard to see in the text the way it's written, but down towards the bottom of that second paragraph, it does mention mitigation measure bio 3. So essentially what we did was refer to a mitigation, the bio 3 mitigation measure, rather than come up with a separate one just for this item. We're referring to another mitigation measure.
Okay, fine. And then on page 15 of the MND, and I guess this is just sort of a clarification from my understanding as well. This has to do with I think this is air quality sensitivity, because it says there are no existing, it's kind of middle of the paragraph under item D. There are no existing senior residential apartments, schools, daycare centers, playgrounds, hospitals, or medical clinics adjacent to the project site. And then it says on the north, east, and west, there are multifamily residential developments, including a senior housing complex, Burbank Heights. That's not adjacent to the, Burbank Heights is not adjacent, but it is a senior complex, but it's down the street. So I'm just wondering if that needs to be clarified or just taken out because it's not adjacent to the property, or I'm just.
Yeah, I would recommend we strike that. It is looking for things that are adjacent to the site at that, for this component. And yes, I recall actually discussing Burbank Heights with Kelly, but it's not within the range.
Okay.
So in this case, I would just strike after the make the comma period and strike including a senior housing complex, since it is not obviously adjacent.
Okay, great. And then the last item on page 40, and this goes back to the traffic count change. I just wanted to make sure that the traffic count, we could, I know you said it's revised to a less than significant, but if this is a draft and we can change that, then we might as well change that since we have updated information on the actual trip generation.
Yeah, and what I would probably recommend here, but Steve, definitely let me know how you feel about this. What I would probably recommend is that we discuss that the trip generation rates are based on 1 to 3 bedrooms and the 2.7 residents per, given the scale, and note that given the scale of this, the size of the units for this, being studios and the lesser square feet, that the impacts are likely less. But I would prefer leaving in the 73. It is the worst case. Obviously, it's not really likely. Just having lived in a 500 square foot unit for a number of years myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we can certainly revise and enhance that with the additional information.
Okay, that would be good. I think it'd be good to just document that, that was clarified.
And I will, just for those, because I know there are some commissioners who are not used to CEQA, seeing CEQA documents. Most of the projects we do are exempt. Anything that includes a rezoning is not exempt. And obviously anything that has an impact beyond, we do CEQA review on a case-by-case basis for those. But just to remind everyone, CEQA is a disclosure document. It isn't a, you have to pass, it's not a test that you pass fail. It is a disclosure document of the potential impacts for the decision makers making the decision on the project. And so in that light, Chair Fritz, I think adding in the additional information about the traffic does make sense, so that when council reviews it, they'll have that additional information incorporated.
Great, thanks. And then just to kind of clarify, kind of the same item, it was mentioned, I think it's mentioned in the negative declaration, but Kelly also mentioned the threshold of 110 car trips. Like what is that threshold? Is that threshold based on just any residential development, or is it based on the number of units, or how does that 110 unit threshold as a level of significance get determined?
Yeah, that's, oh, go ahead. Okay, it's Senate Bill 743 determined that if a project can demonstrate that it will generate a less than significant level of vehicle sorry, I can't talk, I promise. That if a project will generate less than a significant level of vehicle miles traveled, if the project includes affordable housing, housing within a half mile of transit, or housing projects generating fewer than 110 trips per day. So basically, if a project can demonstrate one of those things, then it's considered to be a less than significant impact. So since it falls under that 110 trip threshold, it's considered less than significant.
Great, Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
That's all my questions. Any other final questions from any commissioners? I didn't call on you specifically, Linda, but did you have any questions of staff?
Just a quick one about the 9 on-street parking spots. I know they're not required to produce those, but they're not dedicated. So that means anybody could park there.
That is correct, yes. Yeah, they will be public parking spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Any other final questions of staff before we move on to the applicant's presentation? Kathy?
Well, yes, maybe this question is a question of staff. I know people are concerned about parking, so I wanted to bring this up. One of the parking spots they've created is a handicap zone. If not one of the residents is handicapped, or no one has a handicap sticker for their car, can other people park there, other residents? Or are you saying that that's a completely public lot and anyone can park there?
I believe they can, so the way this will work is that each person will have a assigned space. So 10 units, 10 parking spaces. I believe if the person assigned the handicap space is not handicapped, they will still be able to use it, or guests can use it and things like that. But I think this actually goes to the applicant's presentation, because I know they have 4 units that are universally accessible.
Oh, okay.
As part of that. And so that may be a desire for the project, actually.
Thank you. That makes that feel a lot better for the people who are worried
Right.
about parking.
And do you know, Kathy, having lived in a condo development where, I have swapped spaces, even though I technically owned a space, I have swapped spaces with someone who needed something closer or needed bigger space. I had a motorcycle at the time, so it was easy for me to park wherever. And so there is a lot of, the HOA, they're all residents, and they tend to, most will tend to operate that way, but the applicant can maybe talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
Great, thanks everyone. So if the applicant would like to make a presentation, now is your opportunity.
Chair Fritz, thank you. My name is Bob Massaro, members of the commission. I'm joined by my partner in Healthy Buildings, Beth Farley, who's the architect, and she's going to be making part of the presentation. I'm also joined by Dante Love, who's my development partner in this project. He'll be making part of the presentation. And additionally, via resource, we have Sierra Hart, the landscape architect, with us. And we have Mike Robertson, the civil engineer, with us. And you've already met Steve Weinberger, the traffic engineer. Could we be allowed to share our screen so we can do the PowerPoint? Okay.
Yeah, Bob, who's going to be sharing screen? Is that you?
I think I have it, Carrie.
Okay, great.
Yep. I'm going to turn it over to Beth, who's going to take the first series of slides. And there you go.
Hello, everyone. Good night. How's everybody doing? Kelly, you did such an amazing job. I feel like I don't even need to do my presentation, but I really appreciate all your hard work. All right, so the project is a entry-level for-sale housing community. So our intent is to have these units be for sale, not for rent. It's 10 zero net energy, low water consumption mini townhomes. And it's located at 7950 Bodega Avenue. And Bob just pretty much went over who we are, but I'm the principal architect and CEO of Healthy Buildings Design Group. And Dante Love and Bob are the co-managers of the Huntley Square LLC. That's the project's owner and developer. And Bob is also the CEO of Healthy Buildings Construction Group, who will be building this project. So the elements of our design for this project started out with the intent of really providing new housing solutions for the city of Sebastopol. We wanted to design small units for entry level and for downsizing home ownership. We really always try to design units around a shared community space for the residents, so providing a courtyard for everyone to share. Contemporary design with low maintenance buildings and the solar panels, low water use, no natural gas, LED lighting, that kind of thing, trying to get to zero net energy. We wanted them to be high ceilings, lots of light, lofts, and single-story mix. The access for pedestrians, we really wanted that to come up from Bodega Avenue, from the sidewalk, so we could have pedestrians come in. Access from access for the cars is from Golden Ridge for residents, parking via shared easement. And each unit have a private backyard space. So they're not just apartments or condos, they're actually townhomes. So they have their own private little garden in the back. They're small, but there's something back there. Bicycle parking obviously is really important in Sebastopol and everywhere. And then we want to have vehicle charging on site. And someone asked just a little bit ago about who this development will serve. And so we've thought a lot about this, and there's 5 people I think it would serve well. First-time homebuyers, trying to get into the really difficult housing market in California, empty nesters, young professionals, aging at home, and Sebastopol's workforce. And I think, Deborah, you were the one who asked about this, but I'm an empty nester and a single person, and I would really love to live in one of these units. I right now live in an apartment that has no backyard, and I would love to be able to live in a small space and actually have a bit of ground so I could have a little garden back there. So this is, kind of our ideas about what this project who people would live there. The subject property is, I think Kelly went over this, but it's on Bodega Avenue across from the cemetery. It's one site to the west from Golden Ridge Avenue. This is a kind of an overview of Sebastopol in that area. It's not going.
It's slow. This is one of the slow ones.
Sorry, my slides are loading slow. Hold on 1 minute.
Try it again one more time. That time to freeze. It's the one that froze on last time.
So I don't have a.
Try the space bar.
Let me make it smaller. Hold on 1 second, guys. Let me.
I don't know if you can.
Let me mute for a minute. How do I mute it?
Lower left-hand corner, you mute. What's doing this? See this? Okay, let's do this. Maybe we'll just
I don't even see
come
it.
over here.
It's not going to look any better no matter what they do.
Yep. I'll remind the public to please mute themselves into public comment. So Bob, I do have this on my screen. I don't know if you'd like me to show your slides, share my screen and show the slides. So Bob, I have asked you to unmute yourself. Could you unmute yourself in the bottom corner? Sam, is there, can you assist here? I'm not sure why they can't unmute themselves.
The unmuting is something they have to do. We can only request it.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Can you hear us?
Oh, good. We got it. Okay.
Carrie, why don't you take over, because for some reason our slides are absolutely frozen. Maybe because we're sharing and our mouse doesn't seem to be working. Thank you.
Okay. Let me sit down. Where's my camera? Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I can't see you guys.
We're going to have to tell her to advance the slides. Carrie, if you could go back to the slide that Beth left off on, and then we'll just ask you to, there we go.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.
All right, so I think we're ready to go to the next slide. Okay. So this is a proposed site.
No, because you're sharing her slide.
All right, so we've looked at this a little bit before, but I just wanted to explain a little bit more. These are the 10 small units. They're all under 600 square feet. There's a mix of single story, and there's 4 of those single story units. And then there are 6 loft units, which are basically a big tall 2-story area and then a loft with a stair leading up to it. There are no completely closed off bedrooms. They're all studios. And we will build improve the sidewalk with a public utility easement behind the sidewalk, and then a retaining wall with the stairway that goes up into the middle of the courtyard. And then in the back, there is the parking area where the easement comes through the development to our east off of Golden Ridge. Okay, next slide. So this is a model shot of the development from the south side of the project, Bodega Avenue. And you can see the design of the buildings is a contemporary sort of cubic style and with pop outs. In this particular model rendering, you can see the retaining wall and the sidewalk. And during the design review prelim meeting, a great idea came up in that we would put a 1-foot curb on the back of the sidewalk, and then add a sloped landscaped area. And in doing this, it really reduces the impact of the height of the retaining wall from the sidewalk. And we thought it was such a great idea, we incorporated it into our plans. So you can see that here now a little bit. And I have a few more pictures of the model. You can see more coming up. Yeah, and these model shots, I just wanted to be really clear. We were very careful about making sure that retaining wall really showed its true height when we develop these models. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a view of it coming from the east side of Bodega Avenue. And in this shot, you can really see how that landscaped area slopes up to the retaining wall, reducing its height a little bit. And you can see the curb a little bit better there. And in this shot, you can start to see a little bit of what the windows and doors looking into the courtyard would look like. Okay, next slide, please. This is a shot coming from the west on Bodega Avenue. This really shows how we'll connect the sidewalks from one side to the other. Next slide, please. So in this model shot, we're showing the north end of the property. This is where the cars will park. And in the little inset, you can see kind of what it looks like right now with the fence around it. These trees, the big tall redwood and pine trees on the opposite side of the site here are the existing neighbor trees that we're going to preserve. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about that there. Let's go to the next slide. So these are the courtyard elevations in drawing. And this, you can see the contemporary design and the carved out cube. And within the carved out cube is where the windows and doors will be, and the cube will develop shade for those windows and doors. You can also see the stair down to Bodega Avenue here in the section on the bottom and on the top, I guess, on both ends. Let's go to the next one. So these are the backyard elevations, and in these elevations, we've developed the horizontal siding and then a vertical corrugated siding and then a horizontal siding and then a vertical corrugated. So we're playing around with material elements, breaking up that elevation a little bit, giving it some interest. On the west and the south windows, we're going to have awnings that will help shade the windows to not get so much sun inside and heat gain. Okay, next slide. So we developed this slide for design review, but I thought it would be interesting to leave it in so that we could explain more what the building's made of and the colors. So the siding, the horizontal siding is siding called Smart Side lap siding, and it's be a 12-inch wide board, and it would be painted with a redwood color. And the windows would be a black window frame. And where we have the vertical corrugated siding, it would be what's similar to what's the inset picture is there. In the carved out parts that face the courtyard, we would have stucco with reglets, metal reglets that break it up. And we have backlighted LED lighting and backlighted numbers for the addresses and LED lighting for the front doors. And then we also have these curved perforated awnings that cover the windows. And then we have the downspouts that are the galvanized steel. Next slide. So this shows some of the fences and landscape materials. The fence along the two fences along Bodega Avenue, there are two types. One is a more closed-in fence, which is the backyards, and that would be this horizontal redwood fence you see above at the top. And then we would use the hog wire, more open fence for the fence that comes toward the central pedestrian stairway. And all of that is on top of the board form retaining wall. Okay, next slide. I think this is another site plan. No, it's not.
And just so you know, it looks blank on my slideshow, and it is having problems loading that. So I don't know. Next time you present this, you might want to reduce that to a much more simple JPEG.
Okay, I guess we can skip it if you want to. Might be able to come back if it actually loads itself. Oh, there it is. That's the floor plans. Can you go to 15, Carrie?
I'm a little concerned about doing that, Beth, because it wasn't coming up very easily.
Okay, well, these are the first floor plans. And this shows the two different unit types. The one floor studio unit is, you can see the front porch. All of them have front porches, but the front porch leads into a sort of kitchen dining area. And then it has a full bath with a little living sitting area and then a bedroom in the back. And then in the studio with the loft, you've got similar, you come in off a front porch, you got the kitchen dining area with a little sitting area and a half bath. And then you go upstairs, and can we get to the next slide, please? Which still loading?
It's thinking about it.
Yeah. Has a mind of its own. There we go. So you can see in the orange floor plan, the stairway up would lead to a sleeping loft with a full bath upstairs and a closet. And then on all the roofs, there will be solar panels on racks so that it doesn't get into the shading of the unit next to it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So when we design at Healthy Buildings, we use this periodic table of sustainable elements that we've created to help us really guide what we want to do in a project. And this project, I believe, has 26 of these elements in it, 28. And the elements are basically the dark blue is the natural elements, the light blue is health and wellness, the green is materials and resources, the orange is community, and the red is energy. So if you could go to the next slide. I just wanted to talk about a few of these that will be part of this project. Connected community is, living around a shared courtyard and getting to know each other. Pedestrian meeting points is about the courtyard. We have all the kitchen sinks looking out of a window right into the courtyard. So you can say hello and, monitor what's going on out there, while you live there. Getting to know your neighbors. Beautiful and sustainable, durable homes is the way we build. We build with the most sustainable materials we can, no off-gassing, extremely low utility bills, and we like to generate all of our power to get to net zero energy. And we always use water fixtures that consume very little water. Next slide. Some of the main features will be the village courtyard, which is it's important to have daily meeting points with your neighbors, and getting to know each other enhances the community feeling. Like just said, the kitchen window oriented towards the village courtyard and the front porches that face each other. We can have some chairs out there and talk to each other. Energy savings and health, net zero energy through solar powered electricity, highly insulated walls and floors to reduce heat loss and benefits around and sound attenuation. And we will not be bringing natural gas to the site. And none of our materials that we use off gas. We're really careful about material selection. Durability in the houses are non-toxic materials, reduce, reuse, and recycle materials during construction. Everything is low maintenance and low water landscape. Next slide, please. I think this is Dante's turn.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in.
Okay, great.
Thanks so much, Beth, and thank you so much for the Planning Commission. We are really happy to be back in front of you for the third time. The purpose of my section is really to provide context, because it has been a long path to get to this moment. There have been a number of hearings that included public comment. We had a meeting with the neighbors a couple of weeks ago, and we just wanted to address the ways in which we've used this process over time to make changes to the project. Because it's been since 2016. So over 5 years, I think it's easy to forget what we presented in 2016 versus what we're coming forward with now. So you can go to the next slide. The first thing is that it's a vacant piece of land. One of the pieces of comment we got at the neighbor meeting was the idea that it would be great if we could clean up the property. When Bob and I first happened upon this property, the grass was taller than me. We found a lot of dumping that had happened on the site. We found a number of cigarette butts that had been flicked into really tall grass. We had to do a phase 2 environmental study on this project because we weren't sure where the dumping was coming from. And it's a blight. So we have made several efforts over the last 5 years to keep it clean, to keep it gated. People have taken down the gate, they've gone on the property, there's been tenting. But we think the most sustainable way that you can clean up this property is to develop it. The best thing we can do in terms of maintaining a healthy, clean, safe environment is to put houses on it. I think the longer it goes undeveloped, the longer it goes without us having a way to address that for the long term, to address it permanently. You can go to the next site. So the first thing is parking. It was mentioned a couple times in the presentation. To date, we were only required, based on Sebastopol's parking ordinance, to provide 10 parking spots, which we did in 2016. And we got the feedback from the Planning Commission that, you know, one person could live in these homes, but also two people potentially, and those two people could have cars, and that perhaps there was not adequate parking on Golden Ridge to account for that. So despite the fact it is not currently included in the code, we've said, what can we do within the property that we currently have that would increase the benefit to our residents and to people who live in the surrounding area. So no, these places are not zoned to the specific residents. This is just additional street parking with the idea that we just wanted to create more parking in response to the idea that maybe there was not sufficient parking on Golden Ridge, but we wanted to create an opportunity for there to be more parking. So we're providing, I think it's an additional 80% if you don't count the 9th spot, because it's not entirely on our land, but 80% above what the city is asking for in terms of parking. And despite the fact the city does not have a guest parking ordinance. You can go to the next slide. The next thing that came up was the idea of trucks coming and going on the easement. Obviously, a heavier vehicle could create the need for maintenance more frequently. We agreed with that. So we striped the very last spot. We took away one residential parking spot and created a loading zone for people to deliver things directly to the site. I'm told there are questions about what do you do if someone needs to deliver appliances. I would remind you that New York City has buildings that are 48 stories. Some of them have elevators, but some of them do not. Taking appliances upstairs are things that happen in lots of housing applications across America. So that is something that could happen up that pedestrian access stairway in the front of the retaining wall. You can go to the next slide. There was a question about trash trucks. Was Recology going to drive a truck directly in, pick up a giant bin, and then back out the 180 feet to the property? We heard that concern, and we made changes to the way trash was collected on the site. We are going to hire someone as part of the HOA who is going to roll the bins out to the street, and they'll be collected just like residential trash. So there's no longer any large truck that is going to drive on the easement, and that should alleviate some of the maintenance concerns that go along with that. You can go to the next slide. We talked a lot about the oak tree in the southeast corner. I don't think Heather is here tonight, but we took a look at that. The city's arborist took a look at that, and we've created a plan to hand dig around the tree to make sure that the piles for the retaining wall are constructed around the roots. And obviously we are going to be paying very careful attention to maintaining that tree throughout construction. And obviously we think it's an asset to the people who live in the adjoining property. I mean, having a beautiful old tree in your backyard is a beautiful thing. And that's something that we want to maintain. So like we have an interest in building a retaining wall to the satisfaction of maintaining the houses, but also maintaining as many of the trees as we possibly can. And that is one we will absolutely save. You can go to the next slide. The other question that came up in 2016 was the idea of access. We had the access easement through the parking lot. There was the question, how can residents get directly to their properties and not go through the easement? So we did provide a separate access. This is before there was any parking to go along with it, but there's separate access directly to the houses. And now there's parking on Bodega. People can park there, walk up. And I think that is going to considerably reduce the use on the easement. So I think we've gone to extraordinary lengths to minimize the amount of traffic on the easement. Even though it wasn't necessarily written that it had to be done that way, we wanted to take into account the feedback, and we wanted to take into account the relationship with the development to the east to try to make the amount of traffic on that easement as little as possible. You can go to the next slide. So, and I think Bob is going to review the easement specifically, but before he does that, I just want to say, it's been 6 years, which is a long time. And when Bob, Beth, and I thought about what to do on this property, we constantly went back to the general plan and the idea of highest and best use. And this piece of property is zoned high density residential housing. Someone brought up earlier that even though 0.5 units count, or even though studios count as 0.5 units, that it's still 10 units. 3.9 times 25 is still 9.75. So like we could build 10 3-story houses and still be within density on this property. We don't feel like that product type or that price point is indicative to the type of housing we'd like to build. But within the density of this project, without density bonuses, it would still be allowed. Part of the reason we got into this was to build a different product type, and a product type that new construction, healthy considerations, and something that people could afford, that's significantly less expensive than a lot of things that are available, certainly a lot of new construction that's available in Sebastopol. So we think what we're presenting is both consistent with the general plan, it's good for this property, and we think good for Sebastopol. So we're excited to move this forward. I'll turn it over to Bob.
Hard to follow that. Great summary, Dante. The easement you can see here in yellow, this was a key component of this property. This easement was created in 1993 when the project, the townhome project to the east was created. That easement allows for both properties to have ingress and egress, to have trash trucks, to have delivery. All of that is allowed within the nature of the easement. Most of those considerations we're setting aside for all the reasons that Dante mentioned. Next slide, please. There is a maintenance agreement that goes back to 1993, and it is recorded, and it's on the title of all the adjacent property owners, and it's on our title. And you can see here that we are to share maintenance of the easement. And I have said to the neighbors, and I'll say it here in the public hearing, is that we're going to make sure that the consistency of that pavement is brought back to the current condition, if not better, when we're done with construction, because that is going to be the method of egress and egress for our projects. We want it to look as good as possible. But I just wanted everyone to understand that there is a recorded easement maintenance agreement for this easement. Next slide, please. Anyway, I think that Kelly did a great job with her staff report, Carrie's editing, Carrie's oversight, and we are consistent all the way down the road here with the housing types, the height maximum, front yard setbacks, and so on. So I don't need to do this because I think the planners did a great job of this. Next slide. Essentially, and they also show what we're asking for, but in its simplest format, we're asking for smaller lot sizes, and we're asking for side yard setbacks going from 9 feet to 8 feet. Next slide, please. This is a really scary slide. The median sales price in Sebastopol right now is $970,000. Look at where it was in 2019. These will be the least expensive new housing that we can see anywhere in Sebastopol, and they will be not more than half of this, or excuse me, close to half of what the median sales price is here. So we really are, as Dante says, we're bringing a new product to the mix that we think would really check a box for people who want to buy new housing in Sebastopol. Next slide, please. You know, I've been talking about fighting climate change for 20 years. And, you know, it's one of the things that we try to do with every project. So we're going to have solar panels, which gets us to net zero energy. We really want people to know their neighbors. They'll be parking for bicycle. We haven't done natural gas in quite a while, and we don't plan on doing it in this project. Smaller homes. The one-story units will be, as Beth said, handicap adaptable. Low water uses, Energy Star appliances, extremely well insulated building envelopes, double pane windows, low E. And then we are going to have 2 EV charging stations on site. And I believe the next slide is our last slide. The three of us are here for questions from the Planning Commission. Thank you very much for the time and listening to our presentation.
Thank you very much, Bob. So we will start with questions from the commissioners, and Deborah, I see your hand up, so we'll start with you. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much for your time and the work that you put into this, both our Planning Commission and to your staff. My initial question was answered with who you are targeting this for. And, I guess it seems to me like the unit with the loft, you've included the square footage of the loft in your overall square footage, and that has 2 bathrooms, and the unit without the loft has 1 bathroom, and that's where the additional square footage comes from. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
No, she can hear us.
That's right.
Okay. And you said the price is going to be about half the median price. I will tell you, I was shocked because I've been following the real estate. I didn't realize median price was quite that high. So are you saying that the price of these will be around $500,000?
That's what we're looking at. The market moves all the time. We'll see where we are when we finish, but that's the ballpark that we're in.
Okay. I guess my question just, still is, for someone downsizing, that makes sense to me. If you can sell your house for $970 and you want to downsize, but it would be interesting to see what the median salary is in Sebastopol compared to what this house price would be, because our salary is not kept up, which is one of the issues we have here with people being able to afford homes, work and live in Sebastopol. And I think that, even $500,000 is a little steep for the entry-level home buyer that you had on your slide. And now I'm doing this from memory. I think it was entry-level, downsizing, senior, and forgive me because I can't remember the rest. Love the concept, love the idea of community, love your concern to the environment and the style for building, but I still do have some questions, about, is this truly entry level, and where would that, and so each person is going to individually own their own home and then pay the HOA. Is that accurate?
That's right, just like a townhome. I just wanted to address your question about the other person who it would serve would be young professionals. And if you had a couple that were both professionals, they definitely could, well, I don't know for sure, but more than likely they could afford a $500,000 mortgage. The California housing market is really terrible right now, and we have hardly any homes that are entry-level homes, and so we're really trying to make this work. So I think that it'll hit most of that market. Everybody's in a different situation.
Yeah, I totally hear you, and I hope you're right. I have a daughter who is a doctor and a daughter who's nurse, born and raised in Sebastopol. They can't buy in Sebastopol.
I know. Yeah.
And my daughter who's a nurse has been on a COVID ward all year, working 20 hours a day, even with overtime. She can't, even with the overtime. So I just feel like, you're right. The market is hard. I just want to know if we're going to all this effort and creating this density and, looking at traffic. And Bodega Highway is really a very difficult highway to migrate, turning left and right. Under the best of circumstances, we're looking at evacuations. I sat there and I counted the cars going by, and I tried to turn several times, and I clocked how long it took me to turn both left and right on Bodega Highway, taking into consideration, the project is beautiful, but the density of it. So I guess really, looking at what the research was for projects like this in, our socioeconomic community, and do they really, is the purpose really served? Can people, is it making a difference?
Well, I think that question is going to be answered when the project comes online and for sale. The fact is, though, that throughout Sonoma County, to find anything new in the $500,000 price range is rare. And we are taking a risk. We're building, we have built small before, but we believe that the market's there. We believe that either people downsizing or people like your daughters who can't afford the median house of 978,000.
They couldn't afford this either.
Yeah.
But do you have examples of the small houses you have built and how it served those communities? I would love to see some research and see how positively it impacted.
We have some data in our business plan. You know, as I said, it is it's something we feel confident that will succeed. It's something we feel confident will sell. It's something we feel confident will really help the housing stock in Sebastopol. And to have zero net energy, remember, the utility bills are almost zero. So we're confident that this will work. Are we absolutely sure? No. You know, real estate is a gamble, and particularly in the Bay Area. But we feel that this is a really good gamble, and we feel, you know, we put a lot of money into this, and we're going to put a lot more money into it. So I guess that's the best bellwether of how we feel about how successful this will be, is that we're putting a lot of money into the project. We believe in it.
I think my question is a little different, then I won't take up any more of your time. Not will it be successful, but how it positively impacted the community by offering, you know, housing to those underserved. You know, if there was any projects you've done like this that we could see, you know, the positive impact.
Well, I have condo projects we've done in the past that are small and sell in this price range and greater. I'll send you a link of one of them. We're here in Napa. I'll send you a link of one of them. So this is not the first time we've done small, and this is not the first time we've done townhomes. And I do know that in the past, frankly, we've sold them before we finished them. So, you know, time will tell.
Thank you so much.
Hey, before you leave, God bless your daughter, the COVID nurse.
Yeah. Gosh, really, God bless her. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Good for her. Okay.
All right. Is that all, Deborah?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant from Planning Commission? Not seeing anyone. I will jump in. I just had one question to clarify. So you're asking for your development standards an 8-foot setback from the side yards, which will be your development's rear yards for the townhouses. But just looking at the site plan, it looks like you've set that 8 feet at the kind of northernmost unit, and the site kind of splays out a little bit. So as you get towards the front, those setbacks actually become greater. And you also do have, I believe, I looked from the site plan, the buildings themselves kind of step in and out next to, you know, compared to one another. So again, the 8 feet would be like the unit that's kind of closest, but then the adjacent unit is actually going to be more than 8 feet. One, because it's not as aligned with the adjacent building, and it also, you know, again, the property lines are sort of splaying out. Am I looking at that correctly?
That's right.
You're absolutely right. It does. It's 8 feet. It's a minimum, and they get much greater as they get closer to bodega.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, I think that's all the questions I had. Kathy, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, Carrie was alluding to the fact that some of the main floor units, one floor units would be accessible. Is there a number that you're thinking of right now? One or two?
So I believe when we go through the CDs and the building permit process, all of the ground floor units will need to be adaptable. And I think there will be one fully accessible unit from doing other multifamily, I think that's probably where we're going to be. And that's where the ADA parking space comes from. And I think that parking space, let me just talk about that a little bit. I think it's the same as Carrie thought. There are 10 parking spaces back there. There are 10 units. So if we don't have a person who needs an ADA spot, that spot will just be filled by the last unit, the last resident. Does that make sense? All of the bathrooms on the first floors are ADA compliant at this point. They're all big enough. They all have enough room in them to have the ADA space in them. We'll use all lever door knobs and toggle switches and try to get as close to universal design as we can. You know, we want to make this accessible to anybody who can live there. Obviously, a wheelchair can't go up the stairs, but I would hope they would want to just live on the one level unit.
You know, I really want to expand on that. I spent 4 months in a wheelchair and in the middle of my career. And it changed me as a builder because now, for example, all our interior doors are 3 feet wide. And we put backing in for grab bars in the showers automatically. I mean, it's just the way we build. So the single story units will be very adaptable, kitchen height, countertop height, all of that type of stuff. So it is something we're very sensitive to.
Great, thanks. Anything else, Kathy? Zach?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the thoroughness of the presentation and the accompanying documentation. First off, on the parking, parking to the north of the project, is the backup space, the distance for backing up compliant in it? Is it reduced in any way? I know it's a little tight, and I know you have a demonstration in one of your drawings showing the radiuses. So is that within standards? That's one question. I see you are providing 2 EV chargers. Will you be putting infrastructure in for more than 2, so that if you do end up with 7, 8, 9 electric vehicles, which I think is probably not unlikely, will that infrastructure be available, or will you be able to add it? And thirdly, the common area, parcel B, does that have any other, I know it's a stormwater bioretention area, does it have any other uses, or is it accessible by the residents? How do you picture that area being used, if at all?
Do you want me to take the first
Sure,
one?
yeah.
Okay. Zach, let me see if I can remember your questions. So the backup area is definitely a 20-foot backup, which is standard. The very last parking place, which is to the west, is a compact space, and it is a bit tight, but I do believe we've got the right radiuses in there on our little diagram that explain how you can get the car out of there. Did that answer that question?
Yes, it was the 20-foot. I couldn't find that number, and I just
yeah, it's definitely 20 feet. And then what was the second?
The second one had to do with, are we going to be able to upgrade the other parking spaces to EV charging? I have to tell you, I didn't think about that until you just brought it up. But for this, but for the sake of some underground conduit, yeah, I think we're going to lay the conduit in. So Mike Robertson, who's listening here, who's our civil engineer, please make a note. We want to put some underground conduit in to go to the parking. As far as your third question, that was the landscaping one. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the where the bioretention is basically where we're going to plant 3 new oak trees. And it is accessible from the sidewalk. You could go up there and sit down under a tree if you wanted to. We're not going to put any fencing along there. It's sort of, I would describe as kind of a natural woodland area. We just want it to be sort of natural and have those beautiful oak trees there.
Okay, thank you. So it's not really accessible per se. I mean, accessible to the residents, I should say.
Well, you could walk. You would have to go down the steps, down the sidewalk, and then walk back up in there.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. But it's kind of an odd shaped lot, so it made sense to put the bioretention over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant from the commission? Deborah?
I have one quick one. You mentioned that it'll be a low water impact usage, which to us in Sebastopol is a very big issue. I noticed the garden in the common space. Will you do any rainwater collection, or how is the what is the strategy there for the low water usage besides, the obvious low water toilets and showers and things of that nature?
I think we should have our landscape architect answer this one. Sierra, are you here?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. As far as the landscaping is concerned, it's all in the preliminary concept design. It's all designed to be compliant with our water efficient landscape ordinance. And that means that, and it actually goes above and beyond what's required by that ordinance. So all the plants are in the low water use category of plantings, with the exception of maybe a couple of plants that are in the moderate use. So that goes along with efficient irrigation technologies. So the landscape water use is in the very lowest category to still have landscaping around the property. That's from a landscape perspective. The bioretention area, it serves as a rainwater catchment, as a stormwater catchment area. So that would be, there's not many rain gardens, but that would be the main kind of rain garden for the site. I don't know about the building, all the fixtures in the building, but I think that that was already answered.
Thanks, Sierra. Anything else, Deborah?
Okay.
Everett.
Thank you. You mentioned a little bit about the walls as far as between the buildings, and it's great the community involvement that this project brings, assuming everybody gets along. But I think it's also important to provide sanctity and quiet and so forth. So I would encourage anything you can do to mitigate or reduce sound between one structure to the next apartment or townhouse. Because like I said, everything is kind of open, and which is great, but then, it would be nice to then, if people want a little bit of peace and quiet, to be able to have that, in kind of a small space.
The sound ratings for townhomes and condominiums is actually greater than it is for apartments. So this is going to be built to townhome standards, which means that there's, is it a double wall or a staggered?
We have a double wall for a structure because of fire code. And we've built these before. And I wish I had the STC rating right on my tongue, but the double walls are very, very good sound. They don't transmit sound very well because they don't even vibrate together.
One of the things that always surprises people when they go into our homes and our apartment units is how incredibly quiet they are. And the reason is because in addition to the insulation that goes in the walls, we put 1 inch of insulation on the outside of the building. So it serves as a thermal break and a thermal barrier, but it's also a tremendous sound barrier. So these are very, very quiet units. And that's, I'm always proud when people talk about how quiet our buildings are.
Yeah, and also the other thing that will help with the sound is really good windows.
Yeah.
So a really good window really makes a big difference in a unit, and we will provide very good windows.
And I appreciate the extra parking that you added. My concern is that's a very busy street, and it's hard to imagine parking there or getting out. And then, as I mentioned, the concern about turning, I think the reason that the left turn in the past was a concern is because if you look to your right, it's kind of a hill, and it's a vehicle. You can't see a vehicle until it's almost on top of you, just because of the slope of the right-hand side. So I don't know what could be done there. I think people are going to turn left regardless of what the rules are. And then people who are parked on the bodega side that want to go back into town probably somehow creatively will figure out a way to do it. Not there a U-turn, hopefully not, but somewhere, down the roads, might be Pleasant Hill Road or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I know the plans for Bodega Highway there, but I don't know, ball outs or any of that type of stuff might be helpful for that. But it's just a concern, just a kind of a comment from that.
There is with that new development of that road, there is a bike lane that will be on the outside of the cars where our parking is going to happen. So we will have a bit of a buffer there from the moving cars to where our cars would be parked or the public parking would happen. So there will be a little bit of space there. Won't be so tight.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions that you clearing your throat, Linda? Do you have something you'd like to ask?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate the acknowledgement and work on accessibility, and appreciate that the city has a checklist that you can use to maybe prime you just a little more on what further universal design that you can put in, that we do require new development and also substantial, adding an addition. And so I don't know if have you already looked at that or not? I think my concern right now is accessibility from Bodega. And I'm wondering, can you somehow incorporate a ramp for wheelchairs or whatever, including delivery? I don't see how people are going to get into that development that needed, or even the deliveries, without going around to the back. So if you could explain that, that would be great.
Why don't you do it?
So deliveries, it's interesting. The deliveries, from my perspective, I've seen a lot of deliveries happen into apartment buildings, upstairs with hand carts. I'm not really that concerned about deliveries getting into this unit up the stairs. We don't have a ramp in the front. I suppose we could consider that. It would take a lot of space out there. It would take a lot of the plant material out.
It would take a lot of the front yards out too. I wish the project was bigger. I wish we could put a ramp, but there just isn't room. We've tried to make it as accessible as possible. It is zone multifamily with the city, and we've done everything we could to make it as accessible we can, but we are limited to what we can do.
Yeah, right now the space in front of the retaining wall is a public utility easement. And so we can't really put the ramp in the easement. And there's only, I believe, 5 or less feet from the retaining wall to the wall of the first unit. So there's not really a whole lot of wiggle room in there to get a ramp in.
How about one of those little units that raise the wheelchair, or the like they have at the Hot Monk?
Oh, you mean going up the steps somehow, having a little? Oh.
Well, it doesn't have to go up the steps. It just raises from one level to the next. And I'm sure the planning commissioners are familiar with that. There's one in the front and one in the back at the Hot Monk. And it's just like a little utility freight elevator that you roll in. You can bring your refrigerator onto, and it just brings you up to the next level. It doesn't take much room. We had a neighbor have one installed by one of the nonprofits that helped to renovate seniors' homes. And so it doesn't take up much room. So might want to think about that.
Yes, we will think about it. I'm going through my head every square inch of that property and where we possibly could put something like that. I will tell you that we will definitely take a look at it.
All right, thank you. That was my my one comment until we get to deliberations. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Any other questions of the Planning Commission? All right, seeing none, I will now open the public comment portion of the meeting. So if you'd like to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand or actual hand, and we'll call on you. You will have 3 minutes. And I am going to start with Marcel.
And Chair Fritz, just note, this is actually the public hearing that you're opening.
Yes, I'm opening the public hearing.
Got it. Thank you.
So can you see the timer, Marcel?
No, but don't worry. I took speech in college.
Okay.
It seems to me that the Planning Commission has bent over backwards for this project to change it from R7 to public to PC, and it seems for the most part that it's a done deal. And I've heard all the comments about how everyone's bent over backwards to accommodate the Bodega Bay HOA, and we are townhouses, not condominiums. FYI, what hasn't been said or viewed on these plans is we haven't seen these buildings that are going to tower over the people. Candace, Tom's unit, and Heather's unit. It's going to tower over them. You talk about building community. You're going to be blocking A, all the light from the west, and B, all the air from the west. Okay, so that is a health problem as far as I'm concerned. Circulation of air. You know, you say it's only 5 units, but technically it's 10 units. It's more traffic. It's more density. It's more everything. And I'm just going to say the last thing I'm going to say. Sebastopol, no, it's not New York City, but it seems like it's headed in that direction. And having lived in New York City, I live in Sebastopol because I don't want to live in New York City. And so, yeah, that's it. There's no shots. We haven't seen any shots of the 8 feet between the condos on the east side and the current buildings that exist there now, Bodega Bay HOA. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marcel.
Thanks, Marcel. I'd like to ask a few questions. Rich?
Okay, go ahead, Rich. You have 3 minutes. Hold on, let us set the timer.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, I can just ask my questions and then you can take it from there rather than one at a time.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be clear that we are planned unit development. We're not townhouses or condominiums. We own all the land below us and above us and the areas around us. My unit is the first unit in the easement. Candace is the second. So all the construction and all the people that are living there are going to be using that easement and passing our building on a regular basis. So that's why we have a concern. So the question I have is, when I drive up from Washington Avenue going west, I count 9 driveways. That does not include Virginia and Nelson. So you're driving up Bodega Avenue, you're heading toward Pleasant Hill, and there's a driveway, and then you go another 10 feet and there's a driveway, and you go up another 20 feet and there's another driveway. My question is, why can't we have access from Bodega Avenue? Because there's one that's right next to Pleasant Hill, the property that's in the back. One more is not going to make a big difference as far as whether traffic gets jammed up, whether people got to go slow. We can always take 35 miles an hour and reduce to 25, because I know it changes from 25 to 35 at around Virginia. We just keep it at 25. And I just want to know why we can't come off of Bodega Avenue. That's one question. The other question is, how high is that wall when I'm standing next to it, that retaining wall? My other question is, all the presentation is they always exclude our properties and the properties around. and what it actually looks like. Our East Van is completely destroyed by the garbage truck right now. Where are the sewer lines going to come from? Are we going to take our sewer and share it with 10 people's toilets? And the power lines, are they going underground, or are they pulling off that power pole that's on the corner of Golden Ridge? And where's the power going to be headed? Another question would be, is there going to be a facilities manager for that HOA on property to make sure that the 15 garbage cans that are down there in front of my place are pulled up in a nice timely manner, rather than 15 garbage cans
There's
just
16.
sprawled across Golden Ridge Avenue. Because I'm the facilities manager here at this homeowners association. I take care of all the property here. And I've also been the one that would call the fire department and ask them to have them come mow the property. Property has not been maintained by the owners.
Okay, Michael, can you, I'm sorry, Rich, can you wrap it up, or about, you're out of your 3 minutes?
Okay. Am I over?
Yes, you are.
So can you answer some of those questions?
We will answer questions after all the public comments. So thank you for the questions. And do we have anyone else that would like to make any statements?
You?
Yes.
Tom, I see Tom's hand up.
Oh,
And
okay.
unmute yourself, Tom. You have 3 minutes.
All right, you want me?
Yes, hello. I would like to thank Ms. Burns and Ms. Kelly for some of their really cogent questions on how this development moves forward. The more I look at it, and the more, and I've sent a lot of input to the process, but I wonder how we are going to put this into place with other people living here. At present, we have some very great people that live in our process that don't have any word and able to get their input into this process. So I'm concerned about all the people that are being left out, I suppose is what I'm saying.
Thank you, Tom. Does anyone else from the public, would anyone else like to make a comment?
That's not what I wanted to say, but that's where it goes. You know?
Are you finished, Tom, or do you want to? You had a few more seconds left. Did you have something else you wanted to say? You're muted. You are muted, Tom.
And I put a lot of input into this. And part of what I was wondering about was things like these things on top of the roofs, the you know, the heaters and the air conditioners. There's 10 of them, and nobody seems to care that they are going to put a lot of air and noise into our environment. So there's a few things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next, I will go to Sheen.
Sorry, Lily.
You can mute yourself, please,
I
Tom.
didn't hit my voice tonight, did I?
Tom, can you please mute yourself? Thank you.
I would like to say something.
Yeah, well, I called on Sheen. Someone named Sheen has their hand up.
Hey there.
There you go, Sheen.
Hey, I'll keep it brief. I don't want to take up too much time. So this is a problem, you know, in general, most small towns, you know, street corners where the signs are, you know, it'll say, you know, Oak Tree Street. It's confusing to me because they're green. You got the green trees, you know, it's a green sign. I don't got great eyesight. I can't see them much when I'm driving. I know some towns have white signs, you know, or maybe a black, just something to help, differentiate. I've got great eyesight. I'm kind of an older gentleman. So just, an idea.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Anna Bressler. I would like to say something.
Sure, go ahead, Anna.
Hi, my name is Anna Bressler and I live in 124 Golden Ridge. And I just want to thank Everett Fernandez, Linda Kelly, and Deborah Burns. Thank you so much for bringing up those issues. It's really going to be very noisy. We are 6 units in here and we are PUDs, and the entrance is only one entrance to the easement, and it's not wide enough to have 2 cars next to each other. I wonder how they're going to bring those huge crane trucks. We have 4 families in here working from home, and it's very noisy. And thank you, Everett, for bringing it up, because I'm gonna be working, and I'm not against, building and the housing. It's wonderful, but I think it would be nice to consider to have less units, because who's gonna be in control of these people who's gonna be buying in there? We're talking about, it will be 16 units using one exit, one entrance only, and the easement is not wide enough. And if you're gonna go into my property, we own the land, so we're gonna have to talk about that, because we are the homeowners association and we own the easement. Well, we don't own the easement, but we have some covenants and something in there that has to say how wide it has to be to have two cars in and out. So thank you so much for letting me talk, and I hope they consider to have less units. $500,000 is a lot of money, but that it is what it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Candace?
Hi. Thank you for hearing our concerns tonight, and I appreciate everyone who's paying such close attention to the details. I just want to refer you all to the letter that Tom wrote you today that really listed, I think, very comprehensively most of our concerns that really haven't been addressed in this meeting. The issue of safety, we are, number one, I know these people have a right to build and I support their right to build. I'm just concerned that it's not being done in a way that's good for the community around them. The building sounds beautiful, they're green and all of that sounds wonderful, but and like Tom said, it looks really good on paper, but in reality, there's a lot of little details that are going to make it difficult. The accommodation of taking the trash cans down to the curb, those trash cans are very noisy. I get to hear them every Tuesday morning, just the 4 that we have. And if you have 10 people with at least 10, maybe 20, and you're bringing them down there, what is Bodega Avenue going to look like on Tuesday morning? That's not really feasible, I don't think. And not only that, but the trash company, Ecology, wants their canisters 2 feet apart in order to pick up. So the little details like that don't seem like a big deal, but they are in everyday use, are a concern for me. Another concern is the noise of not just the building, but also the noise of people driving in and out of the easement. And my personal thought is you're going to probably have a lot of people working from home living in those units, because it's, be people who are doing tech projects and things, single adults that'll probably be living there mostly that can afford it. So I have concerns, about the safety of the easement, that there's going to be problems with people backing into each other, and the noise and the exhaust. I have concerns about the noise coming from the tops of the units. My biggest concern personally is that the units are going to be 8 feet from my fence, 20 feet high, and completely block all sun to my house and wind. And that, that's not healthy for me. The noise and the exhaust is not healthy for me. It's not healthy for any of us. So all of that is really addressed in this letter that Tom wrote today. So I'm hoping you'll all read it carefully and see if you can address some of those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Anyone else? Member of the public? I
I'm
don't
looking
see,
through the gallery. I do not see
I do
any.
not see anybody else either. So
Oh,
I
wait,
will,
I did.
oh,
You
yes.
hear someone?
I do hear someone. Yes, go
Hello?
ahead. Yes.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm on a landline. It's EMF Linda. And so, anyway, it's very interesting, very interesting. I haven't been attending the planning commission meetings for, well, probably years. And so the only reason I'm doing it now is because I'm on my fully corded landline phone, and I'm participating that way. In any effect, I live in a 60-unit apartment complex here in Sebastopol, where I've been for 20 years. I am electrosensitive, and I'm one of the growing number of people who require accommodations, and I am living, like I said, in an apartment here that is shielding. I've got shielding on all the exterior walls, the ceilings, and I have a lot of shielding that I'm wearing. A couple of face masks, head net, 6 T-shirts, an apron, and I've got a $900 canopy under which I sleep to prevent me from electromagnetic fields. My neighbors, my otherwise wonderful neighbors, microwave radiation, they've all got wireless devices, and it goes right through the walls. So what this has to do with your development is that it is a thing that needs to be the exposure to and the intensification of microwave radiation that your development and the people in their cell phones and also the power lines will bring to the neighborhood and the neighbors. It will be exposing them to more microwave radiation poisoning. It's cumulative damage that telecoms have spent a lot of time and energy in preventing the public from knowing about the harm and danger of cell phones and all the other wireless devices. So also the power lines, that was a good thing that somebody mentioned there. Just because the power lines are undergrounded doesn't mean that they're undergrounded properly in order to neutralize the magnetic fields that that is a byproduct of anything with electricity flowing through it. And that includes your charging stations, your electric cars, your electric stove, all those things. Byproduct is magnetic field, which biologically speaking, it is bioactive, and what it does, to put it very simply, is that it promotes cellular growth, as in cancer. We already have a cancer cluster that the city tried to do what they could at the Palm Drive homes near what used to be the hospital, and there is a cell tower there that the
Linda,
city,
your time is up. Linda?
Well, anyway,
Linda,
you get the drift.
We get the
This
drift.
is not a good fit for Sebastopol. I urge you reject it.
Thank you for your comments, Linda.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Thompson with his hand up. Would you like to make your comment, Mr. Thompson?
Yes, I would. Hello, everyone. Thank you for hearing me out. My name is Mr. Thompson. I was walking this afternoon, and I saw this nice young lady, and she had a dog with her. And the dog was on a leash, and I walked up to her, and I said, "Oh, may I pet your dog?" And she said, "Oh no, I'm sorry. This is a service dog." And I thought to myself, okay, well, shouldn't I still be able to pet it? You know, that's what I said to her. I said, shouldn't I shouldn't I be able to still pet it? And she said, no, it's the law. Like, you don't have, you're not allowed to. And I was wondering if maybe we could try and change something into seeing that, like, regular people can want to pet service dogs. Cause it's just, it would have brightened my day, and I would have liked to have done it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, do you have something to say about this project? Because this public hearing is specifically about this project. If you have something to speak about that's not related to this project, that time is earlier in the meeting. And you may also try bringing this to the attention of the city council. But we're here to talk about this proposed housing development on Bodega Avenue. Did something specific about that project?
Well, I live near there, and that's where I saw the dog.
Okay, well, thank you for your comment, and we will move on to the next person. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment about this proposed housing development?
Thank you.
Sure. I'm not seeing anyone else.
I do not see anyone else either, Chair Fritz.
So I will close the public hearing and bring this item back to the council for discussion and deliberation. There were some questions that were asked, and maybe we can go through those first. Let's see.
Chair Fritz, I know there were a number of questions about the utilities. I know the civil engineer for the applicant is here, and he can probably address those pretty quickly.
Sure, that'd be great. Mr. Robinson, you have to address some of the questions about where the utilities are coming from or going to.
Yes, thank you. The water supply is on the opposite side of Bodega Avenue, and there will be a connection T that's brought across Bodega Avenue and up into the project to end with a fire hydrant that's back by the parking area. Each of the units would have, well, first of all, the water meters would be placed along the curb line along Bodega Avenue, so the meters could be read there. And they would include a fire riser for the fire suppression system in the units, and the domestic water supply from the city water. The sewer will be collected from the units and will go toward the north and discharge down the access easement. There's a sewer manhole there, and a sewer line has been stubbed to the property line. So when the development on the easterly side was developed, it was intended to provide access for this property with the easement, as well as sewer supply discharge down that existing sewer line. I might add that there's also one other easement from a property to the north and east, north and west of this particular project, that their sewer lateral comes along the northerly side of the planter strip, makes a turn, and already discharges down that existing sewer line. So that'll be the point of connection for that. The drainage is collected from the backyards in stormwater pipe and area drains, as well as off the roofs of the building structures. They're collected and they run behind the proposed retaining wall, and they discharge into the bioretention filter before discharging to Bodega Avenue. The utility lines, the electric supply will be from Bodega Avenue. There will be a transformer and a drop, and all the utility will be undergrounded into the site to the units. The specific locations of the electric meters, I don't think has been determined yet, but That's the basic supply source for the electric.
Great, thank you. There was also a question about the height of the retaining wall.
Yeah, let me address that.
Yeah.
The original tentative map, and it shows on the grading plan of the tentative map, and the grade, so the grade of Bodega Avenue changes, and it's going down a little bit as it goes westerly. The height of the wall on the most westerly unit from the front grade of the street is 9 feet, and at the easterly side is 7.5 feet tall. And that's from the ground level at Bodega Avenue. The slide that was shown by Healthy Builders, where they've added the curb and landscape up the side of the wall, the front of the wall, to reduce that wall height view from the street, I think is a really good idea. I think it will fit in really nicely, but ground level varies. Oh, and at the far corner of the neighbor's property where that large tree is, that the height of that wall is 6 feet, right at the corner where it makes its turn. The one where we were talking about using drilled piers to support the wall between the roots of the tree that are hand dug.
All right, thank you. I think that was all the civil questions. Do you have any other civil questions you were noting, Carrie?
I did not. I do have one question about the noise and the heat pumps, and I don't know if the applicant wants to talk about the location of those, but I would note that as planning staff, when we review building permits, we do request regularly the equipment noise specifications, decibel ratings, to ensure that they meet the noise ordinance at the property line. We do that for generators, we do that for anyone who adds a heat pump after the fact and whatnot. So we do require that, and that is at the property line that they need to meet the noise ordinance, not at the next residence. So it's stricter than some.
Thanks.
And I do have one more note on the construction, because this the noise, which is the construction components. And I know Bob can perhaps talk a little bit about how the construction logistics, how he sees those happening. So I know we've discussed that with him as staff, given concerns for disruption. But I would note that Sebastopol's noise ordinance actually allows construction activity on Saturdays and Sundays. However, we are limiting construction for this project to Monday through Friday hours, so that there is less disruption than would normally be possible under our municipal code. But that's in respect for wanting to make sure that people have weekends quiet and off from construction noise and activities.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Bob, about the construction activities?
Majority of the work in the beginning will be on Bodega, building the retaining walls, bringing in the utilities, clearing the site, dealing with the trees, building the sidewalk. We want to get all those improvements in first, along with the foundations. We build a lot of our building components in our factory. So the construction time of the buildings is significantly diminished, which will cut also down on the noise factor. So I think that, if this, for example, if this was a conventional construction, somebody was doing stick framing out there and pounding nails, it would be a lot longer and a lot noisier than the way we build it. So I think everybody will be surprised. Look, it's going to be noisy. Construction's noisy. Everybody, there's no way around that. But because we're building a good part of the building components in the factory, we're going to reduce a lot of the noise associated with the buildings.
Maybe explain how we penalize.
That's, yeah, it's okay. I think that's all I have, Chair Fritz.
Sure, thank you.
Well, there was a couple of other questions that I think, just so that they do get acknowledged, that was asked. One about whether a driveway from Bodega had been considered, and another about how the facilities would be managed. Just be important to hear from the applicant on those items, please.
It would be extremely expensive and somewhat dangerous to bring the access from Bodega. We bought that property with the easement in place. So we always knew that whatever we built there, we were going to bring it from the easement. What was the other question? I'm sorry, what was the other question?
The management and how the trash cans will get dropped off at the street and delivered back to the location.
It is an HOA. And just as the neighbors next door and the neighbors behind us have an HOA, we'll have a landscape maintenance firm whose part of their scope of work will be to bring the trash cans down. Therefore, we won't be relying on any particular resident. There's no manager on site, but there are 10 neighbors, and if there's any issues, they can address them with the neighbors. But there's no on-site manager, but we are dealing with the trash cans and the landscape maintenance by contracting it out to a service.
Great, thank you. Mike, did you have something you wanted to add? I see you have your hand up. Mr. Robinson.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate the elevation difference of Bodega grade and the grade of the site. Unless that was fully excavated with retaining walls on the side of the property to get a driveway from Bodega Avenue, it would have to navigate, this road would have to be going a cut of almost 8 feet. And in typical street standards, where a normal street might be a 15% grade, trying to get up 8 feet into the site would take you 3/4 of the way into the site, with lots perhaps on either side of that, which wouldn't be practical to have any driveways. So it really is not a feasible thought to have a driveway into the site from Bodega Avenue, which I'm sure is the reason why this easement was established for access at the very beginning with the other projects next door. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Carrie, do you want to say
Yeah,
something?
and Chair Fritz, just in terms of the access easement, I did want to note that the access easement has been in place since before the adjacent project was developed. And my understanding is part of that is, the engineering and the safety factors of access from Bodega. You never want to have people backing out onto an arterial if you can help it. We recently saw the Habitat for Humanity project, which is taking access off of a side street, or a side access, a similar shared access easement, rather than having people coming and going from 116. So that's a traffic safety and just sort of practical issue in this case with the topography, but it was in place prior to the adjacent development ever being done, because the city understood at that time that was going to be a requirement.
Thanks for that clarification. Did anyone else hear any questions that haven't been answered yet? Deborah?
I heard one of the residents concerned about the density of the project and one of the adjacent neighbors. And actually, I lost internet connection for a second. So,
oh, looks like you maybe lost it again. I think we have lost Deborah.
To eliminate some of the neighbors.
Oh, we lost you again there, Deborah.
Ah,
So Deborah, you may want to try turning your video off. That usually helps if you're having bandwidth issues.
okay. Does that help? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so basically just one of the the neighbors had asked why the scope of the project couldn't be done with 9 or 8 units, thinking that that would solve some of the issues for the adjacent neighbors. And I don't know if that was addressed or not.
I don't think that was specifically addressed, but we're looking at the project as presented to us.
Okay.
There's plenty of things that could have happened with this development, but this is what's being brought forward. So I think this is what we need to, what the planning commission needs to discuss and
No problem. I just want to make sure we heard all the neighbors' questions and if there was a way to answer them that we could. And if not, that's fair enough. So thank you so much, Chair Fritz.
Sure. Unless Bob wants to answer that question. If you have any thoughts of why you have 10 rather than 8, I can imagine what the answer is, but if you want to jump in.
I think you would answer it better than I could have, Chair Fritz.
We have concerns about the cost of these units, and if there's 10 units that share in the site development cost versus 8 units they're sharing the site development cost, that changes the cost of the units at the end of the day. So the more units, the less it's going to cost at the end of the day. So we can't ask for, I think it's hard for us as a planning commission to ask for fewer units that are cheaper. It just doesn't really work that way in the kind of construction world. So unfortunately, I think this is probably, they're trying to hit a price point, and this is the number of units that kind of work for them to hit that price point. So seeing no other, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I should raise my hand virtually.
Okay.
Kelly wanted to note one thing, that right now the conditions of approval do allow construction on Saturdays, but I would recommend that we strike that and only allow it Monday through Friday. I think that's what the applicant is anticipating at any rate. But I know that's what I believe that's what we had discussed with them.
Okay, is that your understanding, Bob? That's Monday through Friday construction? Is that acceptable for that to be in the conditions of approval with you?
Yes, I am. I'm fine with that. And I'm sure Dante is also.
Okay, great. So let's make a note to make that correction in the conditions.
And Chair Fritz, I do have one other question. I'm not sure if it was answered regarding the height of the buildings and the blocking of sunlight and air, I guess, that somebody had brought up. I don't know if anybody addressed that question.
I don't know what exactly, Bob wants to say something about that. The site is allowed to go to 30 feet, 9 feet from the property line. That's kind of our city development standards. So, any development on this property by right is allowed to go to 30 feet tall, 9 feet from the property line. What they're bringing forward is lower, I can't remember exact height, 22 feet or something to the tallest parapet, and 8 feet from the property line. So, I haven't done a shadow analysis of that, but I would imagine that what they're proposing is actually less impactful than what could be, just as if they were following strict development standards. But I'm open to hearing from any other commissioners on just kind of thoughts or, concerns or, motions or whatever people, any, deliberation on this project. Anyone like to start? Don't be shy.
Sure.
Oh, is that you, Zach?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick us off. Really, and I, hope we'll hear from everybody with their general thoughts, perhaps before we get into specifics. But
sure.
This has been since going through the process since 2016, and I know this isn't going to undo the nervousness and concerns and anxieties the neighbors have. I don't blame them. They're going to be exposed to, a year or more of construction, and I fully understand why that would be a scary prospect. But I've watched this developer spend 5 years getting this project the best they can. And I think if I think of the alternative to this project, or what a more conventional development might look like for the neighbors, again, I don't expect the neighbors to be pleased by this statement, but 3 or 4 big townhomes in there would be so much more impactful and so much more unpleasant. And a developer is going to maximize the development potential of this lot. For 30 years, it's been a vacant lot. I completely understand how attached the neighbors are to that, to the light, to the trees, to the sunset, the evening sunlight coming through the site. And this is going to change some of that. And I see those impacts, but also what I see is a project and a project team that have tried their hardest to create a development that has intrinsic values, that meets what the community and the city and the general plan are looking for, and have put the work in, have spent 5 years getting their entitlements and making adjustments. So many of the actual concerns of the neighbors, again, I sympathize with them. I sympathize with the potential of the noise of the bins going down the road. I can sympathize with the construction and the dust and the noise. I sympathize with so many of these issues. But the fact remains, this is a high density lot that will be developed. And it's a question, and I think the responsibility we have here is to approve the best possible development. And I cannot imagine a development that would be less impactful than this one on the neighbors, with the commensurate improvements to the store, to the property front, the bodega frontage. So I am trying not to be dismissive of the neighbors. I appreciate the concerns, and more than that, I appreciate the anxiety that this engenders in any big construction project. That said, I am when I evaluate the planning issues before us, the conformance to high density, the plan community district designation, the CUP, the discussions around the mitigated negative deck and the tentative map and use permit, I find that I'm in favor of the applicant's requests on these items, and I'm in favor of recommending the project for approval by the City Council. So I'm definitely laying my hand out there early on, but I don't want to be disingenuous to anyone. I want to hear the concerns, and I want us to, hear those. And I find that I think this development is appropriate and really does offer a new and much desired type of development for the city. I'll stop going on at this point.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate those comments. Kathy, just make some statements.
Yeah, I'm really happy to follow Zach, because thank you. You said everything that was on my mind, and you probably said more than that. Something I would add to that is that I have been around long enough to remember how people felt about the neighbors to the east when that development came in, because people were so concerned about the driveway getting out on Bodega Avenue. And I know that you probably experienced some of those concerns as well. So we've been here before, and we know that each development is cumulative on the highway, but it's not just our development, it's other places. I also think that I'm really happy the way Sebastopol is moving forward with this particular project because of the size of the units, because that's something for all those years people in the community have been asking for. And if we'd done this 20 years ago, I don't think they'd be that expensive, but I think the project that we have now is so clean and efficient and so perfect for the way we are living today. That is the right project for that site. I particularly understand the loss of the winter sun and the setting sun in the evening and that open space. And to lose that, I can understand how that feels. But we are living in a small town adjacent to a transportation corridor that's really important to the area. And we're going to see more dense housing along those areas, just as the neighbors have become more dense as well. So I also would approve a recommendation to the City Council of the 4 elements that we're considering right now. And I'll add one more comment. Someone mentioned changing the speed limit to 25 miles per hour as routine. I haven't looked at that in a technical sort of way, but I think more and more the speed on the street will be slowing down, and I don't know whether the city wants to look at a time when that would be appropriate, but it certainly should be looked into to see whether it merits some consideration.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Everett?
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate a lot of the comments that have been made. I still have, well, first of all, let me just say that as far as the developer and the efforts and the project that's going in there, really a lot of work has been done to make it the best possible. And yeah, there could be other things that could go on there that may or may not be worse. I just conflicted with what we are, what some of our requirements are. The second paragraph of the staff report says, and I quote, "The zoning amendment requires Planning Commission and City Council review to ensure that it is consistent with general plan land use goals and policies and will not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood." Now, maybe this project is good for the community. Maybe, like I said, it's a well-built, well thought out project, but I cannot say that it is not going to be a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So I don't know if that perhaps in the future might need to be written differently. And either I think that it's to acknowledge that there is not going to be an impact on the neighborhood, and so someone, you're going to approve it and vote for it, or that it will be an impact on the neighborhood. And I don't see how you can say that it isn't, because we don't live there. But you're going to vote for it anyway. And that's kind of the position that's kind of has put us. I really appreciate the concerns of the neighbors and what they're going to have to go through. The one positive way to look at it as far as the neighbors is that all the amenities that they mentioned, the sun from the west and the air and the quiet and so forth, they should look at that as having had that for the last 30 years or whatever, versus something could have been built there right away. So it's not something that's being taken away, which it is, but it's something that they've been able to enjoy and appreciate that could have been gone a long time ago. I've gone through similar things with property around my house that has been developed from that standpoint. I still have a concern about the traffic and the rules, or whether the turning from that road or not. It's just odd to me that it either is a rule or it isn't. Was that changed? Is that still there? Was it just forgotten? And, because if it was put in there for a reason, for safety reasons, whenever it was, I can't imagine it not being more dangerous now than it was before. You're adding more vehicles and stuff like that. So that would be a question that, okay, if that was put there for a reason, is it still there, or it's just not being followed? And it's a question that may not affect my decision, your decision as far as this project, but I think it's something that, I need to have answered before I can, make this determination. The other thing, there were a lot of changes that were made to the proposal, which, a lot of positive and so forth, but it was kind of in a short time frame that, we as planning commissioners are used to, getting information on a Thursday and then having our meeting on, Tuesday and so forth. But for neighbors, there may be things that they may not have had a chance to comment on. I'd be more concerned if this was a final decision on our part, but all we're doing is making a recommendation to city council, and they will have the opportunity to speak to city council down the road. So, so anyway, it's the impact is to try to limit the construction impact on the neighbors and do everything that's possible. Same thing with the garbage cans. I can just imagine, whoever's putting the garbage cans, 12 garbage cans rolling down. I don't know if perhaps we might want to put a limitation when those can be done. Somebody, comes in and at midnight they can move the garbage can. You can hear it from your neighborhood. When people put out their garbage cans at all different hours, you can just imagine, a bunch of them being put out at the same time, because whoever's doing it is going to do it at one time, versus neighbors that, kind of, at least it's spread out. You hear some sometimes and some not. I support the project as far as it's again, what has been done. I appreciate the meetings that they've come before us. I've been in those meetings and how they've changed and taken the ideas and so forth. So no problem with that at all. And I commend the developers, but I said I do have those concerns and my unanswered question regarding the traffic, whether that's going to cause me to not support it or not. Can't really say, but it is an unanswered question as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Everett. Deborah or Linda, do you have any comments you'd like to share?
I really think I have some hesitations, as does Commissioner Fernandez. I was going to quote the same exact sentence you did. And I'm wondering about the impact to the community. And yet I think that this was well thought out. I'm coming into it later. I haven't been here since 2016, but I appreciate and can see all the work and transformation that has happened to this, really taking the community and the concerns into mind. So I do appreciate that, and I see that, and I think it's a lovely project. I am, again, caught kind of, in the middle, wondering if, the impact on the community, as well as I still have some concerns about, the reason I mentioned my daughters were professionals was just because, with $75,000 or $100,000 down payment someone would need, I Googled the average income in Sebastopol, it's $40,000. So even two young professionals, I think, would have a hard time, managing this. And I guess I agree with the developer that I do think they will sell. But my question is, are we trying to provide housing right now to really support our current community, people who are currently living here and cannot afford to stay here and have to move to other places? Or are we trying to attract people who could afford this from other areas? So I find myself conflicted as well. And, I really appreciate all the work and effort that has happened to this point. And so, yeah.
Thanks. Linda, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Okay. We had a very long-term serving council member, Bill Roventini, if you all remember him. And he would say about a project, well, it's like trying to fit a size 9 shoe into a size 7. A size 9 foot into a size 7 shoe. So it's a very ambitious project. I have major concerns about massing to the east. The accessibility, certainly from the street, seems a shame if that can't be included. The idea of the units are small, theoretically should be cheaper. However, there aren't any inclusionary units because of the size, so they're, it's just still going to be driven by the market. I have the same concerns that several of our other commissioners have around the traffic. The easement is so tight. So, I mean, it's just too much. It's just too much, too tall. The massing is just a little too ambitious. But I do appreciate the amenities that we will as a city get in terms of the sidewalk and eventually the bike path and some more parking. So these are my preliminary comments. Thank you.
Thanks. My preliminary comments, I definitely, I agree with Zach and Kathy's statements in terms of, I think we have to look at, this is a developable piece of land in the city of Sebastopol that's zoned for high density residential, as high as Sebastopol gets, 25 units an acre. And even if you do count all 10 units as a unit, you're at 10 units is what they're allowed to do on this property. The adjacent property to the east is 6 units. It's on a smaller piece of land. It comes out to 16 units per acre. The property to the north has 7 units. It's also a planned community. It comes out to also 16 units an acre. So, I mean, this project is right in there with its neighbors. So I understand, and again, I met with the neighbors on site. I hear the concerns, I hear the anxiety. It's hard to accept, a fairly significant project being built on the property adjacent to you. But we have to understand that this project is zoned to allow exactly this project, if not more, to be built on that land. The applicant is proposing units that are less than 600 square feet. These are not family units. These are, they talked about their target demographic. It's going to be 1 or 2 people households. There's nothing in our zoning code that limits the number of bedrooms in a unit. These could be 2 or 3 bedroom units. You could have 10 2 or 3 bedroom units. Again, the height allowed on that property is 30 feet. It's allowed to be developed at this density and more. So if this project were not to be approved, someone could come up and propose something more intense. And I think this is a great project. I think they've done so many things that they've asked for. I mean, the list of general plan goals that this project meets is really large. I mean, to be quite honest, I haven't seen a project come through that meets so many of our requirements for smaller units, affordable by design, trying to get more housing. We are in a housing catastrophe in California. We do not build enough housing. And this is a really unique project with a really unique product type that I think we need so many more of these kinds of developments in Sebastopol. And I'm so hopeful that as this project hopefully goes forward and is built, we will see that this is a great way to provide much needed housing in Sebastopol. I mean, housing in Sebastopol is outrageously expensive. I mean, look at the $900 and whatever that $100,000 is the median sales price. It's outrageous. And yes, $500,000 for 600 square feet is outrageous, but that's what it is. I'm an architect. Construction costs now are $450 a square foot at least. That doesn't include land, that doesn't include design costs, that doesn't include the tens of, not hundreds of thousands of dollars of impact fees, hundreds of thousands of dollars in impact fees. I'm sure this project is going to contribute to the city. I mean, these projects are very expensive to build. And I think that the owner, the developer is trying to make it as affordable as possible. And I get that it's not super affordable. but it is probably some of the most affordable by far for new housing in Sebastopol. You might find some older housing that might be a little bit more affordable, but not a whole lot. I mean, I'm just looking on Zillow. I mean, the townhouses adjacent are in the mid to high $400,000 range, and they're 30 years old. So, you know, this project is right in the ballpark. It's going to be brand new, net zero energy, low utility bills. You know, I can't see why we wouldn't approve this. There's so many positive aspects, and I get it's going to be different. I get, you know, a 22-foot building 8 feet from the property line feels like a lot. But to be perfectly honest, the development to the east has taller than 20 foot. I don't know exactly. They're 2 stories plus a fairly steep roof. They've got to be 22, 24 feet. And some of those are 8 feet from the property line. Development to the north, those units are about 5 feet from the property line. So I get, again, the concern, but, you know, I just feel like this is so important for us to start building housing in Sebastopol. We've been denying projects like this for these kinds of reasons for years. And this is why we're in the situation we're in. We have to start approving housing projects. And yes, it's not going to have zero impact on the neighbors. I get it. But we can't be afraid to approve projects that have so many positive attributes to them. I would hate to see that happen to this. I wanted to address a few other comments that were made. Let's see. Oh, you know, we've been looking at this project for 6 years now, I believe, 5 or 6 years. And we've been encouraging it pretty much all along. I mean, we've been generally giving, yes, this is generally something we would like to see in the city, bring us back something else. And they came back, they've been to 2 preliminary planning commission hearings. They've been to the city council already. They've been to a preliminary design review, and all of them have given this project the green light. So I think that, you know, for us to not approve this would be a catastrophe for Sebastopol, because Sebastopol has a reputation of being a very difficult place to develop. Developers do not come to Sebastopol because of this kind of thing. They go through the process for years only to be denied at the very end. And then we're left with no more housing. You know, we don't build housing because people don't want to come here to build it. I'm excited that this team wants to come to our community and build 10 units of housing. It's so rare. It happens so rarely that I really think we need to say yes when we have the opportunity. You know, I understand the concerns about the cost and who's this going to be, you know, who's going to be buying these? Can it really be a first-time home buyer? You know, I would love these to cost $250,000, but there's just no way that they can cost $250,000 unless the city is going to kick in a bunch of money or there's some big subsidy available. It's not going to happen. So we can wish for that all we want, but by saying no to this project isn't going to bring another project forward that's going to cost $250,000 a unit. It's just not. We need to start building the units as they, you know, we need to start building housing units. We're so far behind on what we need in this community that, you know, we're just way behind. We need to catch up as soon as we can. You know, I hear the concerns about accessibility. I feel that, you know, 4 ground floor single-story units that are accessible or can be made fully accessible, that's great. For a 10-unit housing project, that's more than they're required to do by the building code for sure. And I think that's great that they're, you know, offering that. I get that there's some concern about accessibility from Bodega Avenue, but the grade difference is 9 feet. That is a huge grade difference to make up with an accessible ramp. Accessible ramp for 9 feet would be, I can't even think of how long that would be. It would be very, very long. You know, it just doesn't, unfortunately, this is not a site that lends itself to being, just walk off the sidewalk and you're at the right elevation. And so I think again, I appreciate the concern about the accessibility from the street, but that's why we haven't had a sidewalk there ever before, because it's really difficult. So I think the fact that they're gonna be putting in the sidewalk is awesome. It's gonna allow the people that live around Gold Ridge to walk up to that commercial area on the corner of Pleasant Hill safely and not have to go over either a muddy hill in the wintertime or walk around in the street in a lane of traffic. I think that's a great opportunity, and we should be so thankful again for this developer coming and bringing a project like this to our community and providing these much needed infrastructure improvements. Again, there's concerns about it's too tall, it's too much, the massing is too big. It meets the requirements. They're asking for very little to our R7 development standards. They're asking for a 1 foot difference in a setback. That's essentially it. And they're not asking for very much. And I think they're providing a great deal of much needed housing and much needed healthy, safe, comfortable housing. And I appreciate the neighbors' concerns. I hope that this project gets built, and in the end, it becomes a benefit to the rest of the neighborhood. I mean, the people hopefully will be your friends in the end, and they'll be expanding the community up there. And I think it's going to be a great contribution. And I know it's going to be hard during construction, and it's going to be hard for the units in the existing development that are on the west side of their property. But I think for the greater good of Sebastopol, I think we have to approve this project. And I'm sorry I've taken up a lot of time rambling on, but I'm very passionate about housing and the need for housing in our community. And I think we have to approve this project and move it forward. Zach.
Thank you, Paul. I just wanted to kind of also, I mean, as we know, our purpose as a commission is to debate projects and form an opinion as a commission. And so in the spirit of that, I think it's important to, Deborah's concern about affordability. I am sympathetic in the same way Paul just articulated, but frankly, affordability is not something that we as a commission should or can take into consideration in this decision. We have to set that aside. That's one of our commitments as commissioners, is to focus on the planning issues before us and make the best decisions for the city and for the in accordance with the laws and the standards, protecting neighbors from dangers or a degradation in sort of quality of life. I think, to Everett's point, I think it's a reasonable one to raise the point that in the language in the planning director's report, or the planning report. I was looking for the technical zoning language because I think it reads slightly differently about negative impacts on neighbors. And I think the negative impacts on neighbors that we have to be paying attention to are qualitative issues, sidewalks that aren't safe or aren't adequate, or, change their ability to interact with, access, egress. We can never stop a project changing the light or changing, what happens on a site adjacent. We do have design review board, and this will go to design review board, and design review board will undoubtedly talk about massing. I imagine that the parapet height will come up in design review board, and they'll look at, could that be sloped or stepped, or could there be things that would gain 18 inches of light for the neighbor? There is a process around design that is still to play out, and hopefully we'll find incremental improvements. But we have to focus on the questions that are presented in the staff report. And I think for me, I can't find, I can't find any reason to not approve what is being asked for by the applicant here, or at least make a recommendation to City Council. You raised the left turn question, and I think that's a very good question, and I think it should be something that's passed on if we decide that we can recommend this to the City Council. I think that's a question that could be asked and answered. I don't think it has a significant effect on the project itself, but you're raising a very good point. There's a left turn here. There has been no left turn historically. Is that intentional? Is that someone that's just taken the sign down? You know, I think that's a very good and reasonable question, but I think we have to look at the planning land use questions before us and try and speak to those primarily. Yeah, again, I'll be repeating myself if I go on, but so I'll stop there.
Thanks, Zach. Everett.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, is if to pass that on concern to City Council, make sure that that's clearly at least looked at or addressed, because that's, you know, that's where it would go to. And also the concept of how it's written as far as not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood, maybe that needs to be looked at as far as some more description of that. You know, what does that mean exactly? Because you know, I am acknowledging that it does have a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood, and I think, Paul, you have a good point that hopefully in time that will be a positive, that, you know, people that are there are going to appreciate their neighbors and so forth, and that, you know, it would be a good community. The other thing is, I don't know if there's any way to how the process, how are these units going to be put up for sale? First come, first serve. Is there any way to legally, you know, give preference to someone who's already living in our town? Because I think the point was brought up that, you know, we're creating more places for people to live, but is it people from outside our community to come in and buy these and continue to create, you know, more expensive housing? Is there some way to offer that without being discriminatory, I guess?
That would be against fair housing law. There's no way we can.
I guess there's no. Yeah, so that's the one.
To buy these.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, you know. It just I know some communities have done some similar things. I'm not sure how they've gotten around it, but if there's just some way, you know, somebody could, you know, hopefully take that into account. But anyway, those are just my comments. But again, I cannot say that it will not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood, but I believe that this is the right project. We need it, and just wanted to be clear about that.
Carrie, you had something to add?
Thank you. I wanted to respond and say, yes, I can work with Steve and the city engineer to try to understand whether or not the left turn from Golden Ridge to Bodega, and, you know, whether it is or not, perhaps there just needs to be a decision right now. Is it a safety concern? Should it be this way or that way? If you know, no one knows what the official status of it is. So we'll either clarify the official status or work with council to designate it as appropriate for safety for the entire neighborhood. I know that takes into account both the police chief and the city traffic engineer. And of course, Steve will help us with that assessment as well. A couple of notes. Yes, I do want to clarify, and I apologize if it wasn't clear in the staff report. I didn't even think of it, but we will certainly clarify for the city council. The conditional use permit is associated with the planned community zoning. So i.e. the changes that are being requested from the R7 zoning. So basically going from 9 foot to 7 foot setback. It is not to evaluate whether there would be the fact that there is going to be residential in a residential zone. That if they weren't doing the planned community, this would be permitted by right without the requirement for a use permit. It is consistent with our zoning, our general plan, as Kelly's noted in the staff report. So I just wanted to clarify, you know, all development has impacts of some sort. And as the planning director, I see this all the time. And I think certainly the architect and a couple others on the commission have already acknowledged that. But I do want to clarify that the conditional use permit isn't, is this residential project going to have impacts, negative impacts? It's actually, are the requested changes for the planned community zoning going to have significant negative impacts to the community? So that is something we'll certainly clarify. And I apologize if that caused angst, some angst with the commission, but we'll certainly work to clarify that with when this goes to council. And then, yes, I can respond that the local housing preferences, these are for sale units. Certainly we would hope that they advertise the units in Sebastopol, and if there's a waiting list, that would be great. But yeah, they will be for sale on the open market. And as Chair Fitz had noted, I believe the only way you can do a local preference is if they're a deed restricted and you're doing it as a marketing concerted effort to try to alleviate concerns, but not, you can't restrict for market units in this way.
And then one thing I forgot to mention is I support a couple of the recommendations Carrie had made. One is to eliminate the construction on Saturdays. And I can't remember if there was anything else on there, but you know, I wanted to make sure we didn't forget that.
Yeah, thanks, Everett. And thanks for those clarifications, Carrie. I think those are important. And I appreciate the note about the use permit issue. Yeah, it's one thing when you're, approving a use permit for, light industrial next to a residential neighborhood. It's kind of a different impact, than a residential use in a residentially zoned use in a residentially zoned parcel in a residential neighborhood. Yes, obviously there will be impacts in the neighborhood, but it's consistent with the general plan, land use, and the zoned land use. And I also want to now something Kathy said earlier, which I appreciated, was that, the development to the east was controversial in its day as well. And actually I was looking at, asked Carrie to do a little research on that. And I actually saw that when that unit was approved, it was approved on a 4-3 vote by the Planning Commission. So it was, certainly not a slam dunk. And I'm sure there was some people that were concerned about it 30 years ago. And here we are 30 years hence, and it's a welcome part of our community. It's our part of the neighborhood. And I'm hoping that it takes less than 30 years for this new development to fit into the community and be a part of it. Anyone else, or do you, yeah, go ahead, Bob, do you have something you'd like to say?
I just want to add one thing. When Carrie asked me about the Saturday, Carrie asked me about the Saturday, and then I read the staff report, and Saturday was in there, that we could work Saturday. And now I've agreed to not work Saturday. But what I want to bring to everyone's attention is we typically work Saturdays. Our goal is to get out of the projects faster. So by not working Saturdays, we extend I just did the calcs, we extend the time with 16%. So, I'm not sure if the neighbors would prefer us getting out of there sooner or not working Saturdays. So I just wanted to, and I'm not saying we change anything right now, but maybe between now and going forward, I have the sense the neighbors may want us to get out of there 16% faster than working Saturdays. But I just want to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And maybe that's something that can be maybe discussed before this goes before the council, make sure that item gets maybe ironed out a little bit better, just so there's clarity on, and I don't know how you sort of take a poll of the neighbors to do something like that, but maybe there's some way that can be done. Some neighbor outreach to sort of maybe refine that point before the council sees this.
Agreed. Thank you.
Well, the condition could have language in there that says the applicant will not work Saturday and Sunday unless by agreement of the neighbors. I don't know. There may be some way of formulating. The language could perhaps leave the option open to get agreement to get out of there 16 or 32% quicker. Yeah, so I would hope that language could be have that sort of flexibility either way.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Paul, for Kerry. What are you looking for tonight in terms of motions? Are you looking for motions to approve the two resolutions separately? Or is it simply a motion to forward to the City Council?
So it is to approve the two resolutions, and it could be done in one motion. We do want you to approve the resolution related to CEQA first, and then the conditional use. And the reason for that is that's how council will need to do them as well. You need to certify and adopt the environmental document before you can approve a project and do the rezoning ordinance that they'll need to do and whatnot.
Yes, thanks, Gary. Would you like to make a motion, Zach?
Yeah, I don't, my intention is not to cut off debate and discussion, but
well, we can always discuss more.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I would like to make a motion to recommend approval of the resolution. Kerry, can you help me with the language of what the first resolution is, so I don't have to jump through 4 documents here? But
sure, hold on just a moment. We did, and actually, I did put this in the staff report.
Page 12 of the staff report.
Okay, 1 second. Let me get there.
Is the MND.
Okay, and so what you would do, Zach, is make a motion to adopt the resolutions, recommending the following for approval: that they adopt the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act resolution. And then, so you would adopt that resolution recommending City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration subject to the findings and mitigations included therein, as well as the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. And then either as the same motion or a second, make a motion to adopt the Planning Commission resolution recommending City Council approve the conditional use permit, approve the draft zoning ordinance rezoning the parcel from R7 to PC zoning. And they will actually do a first and second reading for that. And approve the tentative subdivision map subject to the findings and conditions included in Exhibit A, as well as Exhibit B.
Okay. So rather than paraphrase that, what I'm going to say is so moved, but with the following additions, if that's okay with the commission. The following, in addition to the motion as stated by Kerry, I would like to make those resolutions, but ask that the City Council consider the left turn issue that has been raised tonight. And there was another one. I've lost my pages of notes. I'll leave it at that, and then we can have discussion to add to that.
I'll second that.
All right, thanks. So we have a motion to approve both resolutions and to recommend the council look at the left turn issue. Do we have any other discussion?
Did we want to also add about the construction days or times, or how that?
That was the one I was struggling to remember. Yes, I do think we should have the recommendation that the council analyze whether the neighbors, to basically prohibit construction on Saturday unless either by arrangement with the neighbors, or if before construction the neighbors are in favor of a faster timetable and are willing to have construction on Saturday, so be it. But at least that should be looked at. and incorporated it into our recommendations.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And Zach, actually, this is probably would be an amended motion to include that. And so you can just say amend the motion to include that. And if you could also include the revisions as outlined by staff in the staff report. So those are the changes to the draft conditions of approval, like striking the one that's about a carport and those that Kelly had read out previously.
Yes, we should include the revisions as noted in the staff report.
Okay. I will assume that's your motion to amend. And so whoever seconded that, if you could second, if you're amenable to that, to those changes. Thank you, Commissioner, Vice Chair Ottinger.
Thanks for keeping track of all this, Carrie.
Yes.
This one is particularly complicated.
That is a little complicated. I mean, I haven't done a complicated one for a while, so we're a little out of practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, an amended motion and amended second. Are there any further comments or thoughts about the motion as stated? Okay, if there is no further discussion, I again would just like to plug that I think this is such an important project, and I hope that we can give this a good recommendation to the council, and I really look forward to the project getting done. So anyway, with that, Carrie, you want to?
I will do a roll vote.
Roll call.
Thank you. We'll start with where am I on my screen? Commissioner Dauch.
Aye.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Aye.
Commissioner Burns.
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ottinger.
Aye.
And Chair Fritz.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes, or the amended motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Congratulations and good luck at City Council.
Thanks for bringing such a wonderful application and such thorough work, and being willing to put the time in and respond to the various comments and concerns. I know this is a hard process, but we really appreciate when we can get to this stage, at least on the commission, and I'm sure I speak for
look, on behalf of everybody on our end involved with this project, what you did tonight, we're going to make you proud. So thank you very much. And we got our fingers crossed at City Council. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. And yeah, I really appreciate the thoroughness of your application package. The drawings were great. You know, it really helped see. And I do appreciate, because there was a comment made in public hearing about not seeing the impact altogether. And you had those elevations along Bodega that included the project to the east. You had sections that showed the project to the east, and all that is really helpful. And yeah, so good look at the commission, the council, and the design review as well. So I know you still have to go through that hoop as well. So hopefully you can make it through and start working on your construction drawings. And
you got half the old design review board here.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. What do we have next? Subcommittee updates. Does anyone have a subcommittee report they'd like to provide? All right, seeing none, I will just add that it sounds like we have a design guideline meeting next week. So it looks like that's getting kicked off again, which is exciting. And how about a planning director's report?
All right, I will keep it somewhat brief, but I did want to update you and let you know recent meetings that have happened. We did have a design review board meeting last Wednesday, where Habitat for Humanity for the 4-unit townhome project went to the DRB as a preliminary review, and they got some good input from that. and we'll hopefully be moving forward with that project soon. We are full into our housing element outreach. It sounds like we had a meeting today with our consultant, and they already have over 100 surveys, which they said is more than, I forget, there was a Southern California community that had an arena of about 10,000 units, and they got about this number of surveys. So they're like, what did you do? I was like, well, I just sent it to all my boards and commissions and told them to get it out there. That said, we will be doing some additional outreach. We have some flyers that we'll be putting in laundromats, on community bulletin boards, and coffee shops, the senior center, Burbank Heights, those types of areas. And that survey will close December 3rd. So if you see that around or hear anyone talking about it, definitely let them know. We will also be doing, or the consultant will be doing, some focus groups and stakeholder interviews with various folks, both nonprofit and for-profit developers. We actually have a lot of small developers in the area, like Healthy Buildings, and so certainly, what I heard from our Planning Commission affordable housing series that we had last spring was that it's really a lot easier to do affordable housing. That's a big project. 40, 50 units, but it's really difficult. And I certainly know from working with developers that the smaller projects are really the infill, if we have sites for, where it's, 3 to 8 units or 10 units are pretty difficult. So I am going to try to put together some developers for them to talk to and hopefully come up with some strategies that can help with those. If any of you know of any folks that you think they should be talking to, if you could just email me the contacts offline, I'd appreciate that. And so that work is ongoing. They will be presenting the survey results and doing an interim presentation to the Planning Commission at your December 14th meeting. So we'll have that, as well as the Calder Creek naturalization project on that December 14th Planning Commission meeting. We may also have the gas station ban, since that was literally a 10-minute item last time. I think we might be able to fit that in and get that to council. I know that Vice Mayor Green especially is anxious to see that at council. We will not be having the meeting on November 23rd. That was reserved in case we needed a part 2 for Huntley Square. I generally don't like to have big community meetings the week of Thanksgiving or Christmas, because it does conflict with a lot of members of the public who want to attend. So we'll have a little bit longer meeting on the 14th, but it should still, I think, be probably about 2.5 hours or so is what I would anticipate for that one. And then, yes, we do have the design guidelines subcommittee kicking off again. We're working on a couple of things. One is that we'll have an RFP, asking council to authorize us going out for an RFP from a consultant to help us with the objective standards, as well as the SB9, addressing SB9 and what that should look like, incorporated into that. That'll be going to council next week. And then internally, we have been working on standard conditions of approval. And so what this is something that would come to the Planning Commission and the Design Review as the approval bodies. Once that goes through the Design Guidelines Subcommittee, we'll bring it as a regular agenda item to the Planning Commission. I think that, the safe parking for RVs is an ongoing project. There was an update. Commissioner Fernandez, thank you for attending the last City Council meeting. I saw you there. I don't know if it was for that item or another, but they did discuss, and they're continuing to look at that project, and anticipate that will be on upcoming City Council agendas as well. And I think that's it for me, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just because it has to do with subcommittee, I apologize if I didn't get this, but we were trying to set up a meeting between myself and Kathy and Jessica.
Yes, for the Calder Creek. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for that reminder. I do need to confirm the date for that.
Okay, so we haven't settled a date on that.
You haven't missed it. I dropped the ball on that. I will
okay, no, that's okay.
Thank you.
And also, I plan to be present or attend the December 14th meeting, but I will be in Mexico. So just to not rely on me to be the quorum, just in case, technical issues or whatever. But I expect to be at the, present for the meeting, and I know that I can get good service, but just wanted to kind of throw that out there just in case.
Great. Thank you for that note.
Zach, your hand up.
This is just more of a planning commissioner's comment or update, if I could. Just very briefly, the Ceres Garden have been trying to find a site, and as we know, they were looking and talking in discussions with the school, owing to significant complications around water usage and another several other items. It does not look as though that's a viable option for them. City Ventures, I think, was the developer, and I believe that they are no longer the developer who will be involved in that project. I don't know quite the details. Kerry probably know more than I do, but I understand they pulled out. So there's no commitment as of now, I don't think, from the developer to assist significantly Ceres Garden. The purpose for my mentioning this is just that they are looking for a site. If you have ideas, I intend to suggest, at least maybe talk with Patrick about possibly the area of land by the behind the teen center there. Something like that. They desperately want to stay in Sebastopol, but at this point they have no options available to them. So your thoughts and creativity would be much appreciated if you have.
Yeah, and you can certainly let me know if you have ideas as well. I have spoken with Ceres and met with them about looking at some potential sites like what used to be the Global Students on the north side of Park Village, and it sounds like there may be some space. I don't know if it's adequate for them, but that's an option. But they certainly, yes, if there are other sites that people might know of. I believe they told me they were looking for about a half an acre ideally. So that is obviously a pretty large piece of land. So yeah, thank you, Commissioner Dodge. That would, if there's some crowdsourcing ideas there, that'd be great.
All right, any other questions? Well, thank you all for sticking it out till 9:40. It was a good conversation, a productive meeting, and I'm happy with the outcome. Hope everyone else is. I think this will be a really interesting project for us to, see how it works, and what the response to the for sale units would be in the community. And with that, I think I will adjourn us until December 14th.